I know, right? All right, you guys. Yes. Well, no, he's out of town, but,
No, for that item, just for that. No, it helps.
no, it's not the same guy.
Yeah, I don't know if he's representing.
No, I asked him. He said, yeah, I'm here to watch. And then, well, I think he's on. Oh, she is?
Nice dig. Yeah, right.
Yes, hi. It's very nice to meet you. Welcome to the circus.
Good evening. I'll call the meeting of the City Council to order. I want to thank all of you for being here today. I would like to state, though, that I've received some complaints about people in the audience not being able to hear other people having discussions during the meeting, and all I would ask is that you please, if you have to have a discussion, please go out into the hallway to have that discussion as to not disrupt the meeting. Will the City Clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Moreno.
Here.
Councilman Benson. Here. Councilwoman Carson. Councilman Teeter.
Here.
Councilman Bullock.
Here.
Councilman McEldowney.
Here.
Councilwoman Elliott.
Present.
Councilman Douglas.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you do have a quorum.
Thank you. Let the record show that everybody's present this evening. And I would like to ask everybody to stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. But I would also like you to ask you to keep in your prayers Jessica Ridgway's family for the loss. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, if the staff would go around and allow the audience to introduce themselves.
Sure. Michael Gates from Foster Graham, Milstein and Kalisher.
Jody Brecky. Kathy McIntyre.
Adrian Schimpf.
Mayana Schimpf. Mary Morton.
Marty Flom.
Joy Bishop.
Gene Leffel.
Carolyn Habel.
Guillermo Serna.
David Stallsworth.
Violet Frizzell.
Dean Frizzell.
Bobby Redwood.
Sam Hoover, Street and Traffic Operations Manager.
Walt Williams, Economic Development.
Chuck Sonnier, Police Department.
Ms. Ryan Cordero, Government Relations.
Chris Kramer, Community Development. Darren Sterling, Public Works.
Julia Amco, Communications. Sue King.
Mark Stutz. Mike O'Shea.
Sarah Robinson.
John Howard, Information Technology.
Jason Leslie, Finance Department.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is going to be the citizen communication, and I have the sign-up sheet. We will be reconvening the public hearing dealing with the pipeline. So for those of you who have signed up to speak concerning the pipeline, that I'll call on you during the period of time where we have public comment on the pipeline. So outside of the pipeline folks that have signed up for the pipeline, I have one person that has signed up with a different topic, which is the supergroup. Mana Schimpf and Adrian, would you please come forward? Need you to state your name and address for the record when you come up.
Mayana.
Adrian Schimpf, 6081 Locust Street, Commerce City, 80022.
We're kind of doing double duty tonight.
Sure.
Sorry, we didn't want to waste your time. I'm here on behalf of the Adams 14 Supergroup. We are desperately in need of winter coats for our coat drive. We would like to get the information out to our citizens of Commerce City and the council. We are in desperate need of girls' coats right now, but we'll take any kind of coats. And I know that moms and dads forget and put ourselves to the side for the needs of our children, but we do need mom and dad coats. We'd greatly appreciate hats, gloves, scarves, anything to keep you warm for the winter is what we're looking for. Also, gently used shoes. Our coat drive is currently scheduled for the 19th. of this month, so Friday. And if anybody would like to give donations, I am available during the day to pick them up, or, you know, if you want to come by on Friday and drop them off, we'll be at our home. It's the little modular behind Kearney. We'll be there all day long on Friday to collect coats, and we're going to be giving them out. So, again, we need to keep our families warm this winter, and we just would really like the our community and our city to get involved in that. So thank you for that, for my time. Also, I wanted to, he's going to talk too, but, what? Okay, so Rose Hill, another thing. Rose Hill is doing a Lights On After School for the district, and they're going to be painting pumpkins pink for breast cancer awareness. And so we'd like to see some of the council members, if you can come by and paint some pumpkins with our kids and get them going for the breast cancer. A lot of our schools are doing it. I know Kearney wore pink Friday to support breast cancer, and so it's neat that the little kids are getting involved and getting aware, telling their moms and their grandmas and aunties, hey, you know, this is important. We care about you. So it's on the 18th at 4 p.m. at Rose Hill. If you guys would like to stop by, we'd love to see you. And please look into getting involved with our schools. We would love to see the council participate more in our city. Please come and come to our schools and be part. Thank you.
Okay, you still need to, just a second before you leave.
Okay.
While we're on the coat stuff and the pumpkin stuff, do you have any information that you could leave here with the city attorney so that all of us on council can get the information from you?
Yes, and I'll state my phone number right now. My phone number is 303-564-6019, and I do text if you just want to send me a quick text. You can call me. My home number is 303-288-2723. If you can't reach me and you need to get it to a school, the parent liaisons at each school will help you take those codes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And just for community members, if you didn't catch that phone number, if you stop at any school, pick up a business card for myself, Adrian Schimpf. They have all the school board members' cards there. Okay. It does have my contact information on there. Obviously, we're going to work together to make that happen. And just to restate, they do have a home. It's at the former Community Health Services trailer at Kearney Middle School. They're doing great things, but as I said, we're in great need of coats, adult coats and girl coats. We don't want kids going cold with the winter weather coming forward. And perhaps there's something that, as the council or the city can work together to maybe put a collection point, something here before then. We will find a way to make sure that someone can come and pick that up and get that to the event on the 19th. Beyond that, I just have a couple thank yous that I would like to extend. Mayor Ford, you came and visited the second graders at Rose Hill, and I know you got thank yous from all the kids, but as a community member, board member, and a parent, I just want to say thank you for doing that. I know the kids love that, and great response and great feedback for that. Also, I wanted to thank Mr. Bullock, Mr. Douglas, and Mayor Pro Tem Moreno. They came and participated. We had our homecoming events this week, and they came and walked in the parade with us, and I thought that was great. Something that hasn't happened very often in the past few years, and it's really great to see former alumni, well, I guess you're not formal, but alumni and city council members coming and participating. So I just want to say thank you for that. And then lastly, I just want to put some information out there. I'm sure you guys are aware, but to get it out on Channel 8, as you all know, we have the former high school site. We have 3 community input forums scheduled, and I just want to get that out to the community one more time before they happen. What the intent of the forum is to solicit ideas and thoughts and opinions on the disposition of the old high school site, the old Adams City High School site, and those are on October 18th from 6 to 8 at the new high school. And then on October 20th and 23rd at the ESS building, which is the former City Council Police Station across from Walmart. Those are from 9 a.m. to 11. So just to restate those, October 18th, 6 to 8 at Adams City High School, October 20th and 23rd at the ESS from 9 to 11. And that is all I have, so I just want to say thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. You just reminded me. We have a great event coming up November 4th. I'm sure you're all going to receive invitations. Edward James Olmos, the actor, civic leader, community leader, is going to be visiting our community, and that's all thanks to the Adams 14 Foundation. It's a nonprofit that we partner with as a school. But Edward James Olmos is coming on November 4th to speak to our community and speak to parent involvement, community togetherness. It's going to be a great event, so let's get that out there. And you are all invited, and I'm sure if you haven't already received them, Dr. Steele, our deputy superintendent, or Pat Sanchez, our superintendent, will be sending those to you as well. Other than that, I just want to thank you for your time.
Great, thank you so much, and it was my pleasure to go visit with the second graders. I had a good day that day.
Thank you.
So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the next item. The first item on the agenda after citizen communication is approval of the minutes. We need a motion to allow Councilwoman Elliott to abstain from voting.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I could interrupt quickly, I was just talking with Mr. Schimpf. The date of the Edward James Olmos presentation, it's part of the Adams County School District 14 State of the District event, which is actually November 2nd.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McEldowney.
Move to excuse council member. Completely lost her last name. Councilmember Elliott from voting on the minutes of the October 1st meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Moreno.
Second the
I
motion.
have a motion and a second to allow Councilwoman Elliott to abstain from voting on the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
I'm sorry, what was this, who was the second on that motion?
Mr. Moreno.
Thank you, sir.
Motion is approved. Next item on the agenda is to handle the minutes. Mr. Moreno?
Before we do that, I actually have a correction to the minutes. Under the vote regarding rejecting the facts and findings of the Planning Commission, that was actually a 5-3 vote, not a 6-2. The three votes in dissent were Councilwoman Carson, Councilman Teeter, and myself.
Are you prepared to make a motion now? Mr. Moreno? With those corrections?
Yeah. I will move to approve the minutes of October 1st, 2012, with the stated corrections.
Thank you.
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Bullock?
and that was on what item again, sir?
So the vote regarding rejecting the facts and findings of the Planning Commission
On
for...
the conditional use permit?
Mhm.
Mr. Bullock?
Thank you, sir.
Second. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes with the stated changes. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next item is the consent agenda. Mr. McEldowney.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Moreno.
Second the motion.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Mr. Attorney, you want to read the title?
First item, zoning ordinance Z-902-12. Title reads, an ordinance rezoning from I-1 to I-3 zone district. The property described in Exhibit A, attached here to, made a part hereof, commonly known as parcels 172-121-40-1002 and 172-121-005015, and adjacent to 9101 Yosemite Street, Commerce City, Colorado, and amending the zoning map of the City of Commerce City, Colorado to reflect said rezoning.
Thank you.
Next item is ordinance 1927, an ordinance amending section 11-23, parens 3 of the Commerce City Revised Municipal Code to permit the operation of all-terrain vehicles on city sidewalks for the purpose of snow removal, subject to certain limitations. Title of ordinance 1929, An ordinance amending the 2012 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Department of Public Safety Division of Criminal Justice grant funds in the amount of $47,162 for the support of low-cost recreational and educational crime prevention programs for the youth and teens of Commerce City and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. Title of Ordinance 1932 reads as follows. An ordinance amending the 2012 budget of the City of Commerce City, Colorado by the recognition of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, Dr. Cog grant funds in the amount of $100,000 for the station area master plan and the authorization of the expenditure thereof. And that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion, a second. Title's been read. I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record reflect that the consent agenda has been approved unanimously this evening. Next item on the agenda is the conditional use permit public hearing. This public hearing was originally held on October 1st. Staff gave their presentation, public input was taken, and council voted 5-3, correct?
Yes.
5-3, to deny the findings and recommendations of the Planning Commission. Council also had a tie vote, killing the motion to approve the conditional use permit with the exception of the alignment, which the motion maker proposed to go down 96th Avenue. Council then voted 7-1 to reopen this public hearing and continue it to tonight. So that's where we stand tonight. I will be allowing new testimony to be taken. I don't want to go over all the stuff that we already have the testimony we've taken previously. So any new testimony will be taken, and I'm going to start with the applicant, and then I will ask anybody in the audience if they have any new testimony that they want to give concerning this conditional use permit. Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, prior to proceeding with the testimony, I'd like the record to reflect that the city has received 4 letters that should be made a part of the record in this proceeding. So in addition to the record exhibits that were previously considered and admitted in the October 1, 2012 proceeding, the following letters should be added as exhibits in this proceeding. A letter dated October 5, 2012 from M. Begay, B-E-G-A-Y. A letter dated September 25, 2012 from Michael Cowley of Cowley Management, LLC. A letter dated October 15, 2012 from ACED, signed by Barry Gore, President, CEO, and a letter dated October 15, 2012, signed by David Foster on behalf of Cowley Management, LLC. So those 4 documents should also be added to the record of proceedings in this case.
They are. Thank you. I'll reconvene the public hearing now, and we'll ask the applicant if they have any new testimony that they would like to add to this hearing.
Yes, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Preston Gibson, Area Manager with XL Energy. My address is 5460 West 60th Avenue, Arvada, Colorado. It's a pleasure to be here before you this evening again on this case. I'm actually glad to see we're ahead of schedule so far, so hopefully we'll be able to keep you ahead of schedule. It's only about 10 till 7. I think we were up 7:20, so that's good. I wanted to tell you that we are backed up with a strong team of professionals from XL Energy this evening, as well as a couple of consultants. I wanted to just very briefly introduce who they are so they can be available to answer questions. Sarah Robinson, Principal Engineer and Project Manager. Gary Sutherland, Gas Capacity Planning. Sue King, Gas Capacity Planning Engineer. Cheryl Diedrich, Senior Right-of-Way Agent. Bobby Redwood, Operations Manager, Cherokee Power Plant. John McDonald, Project Manager, Tetra Tech. Carolyn White, Attorney Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, and Schreck, Nadia El Malik, Assistant General Counsel, Mike O'Shea, Manager of Engineering, Mike Jablonski, Director of Engineering, and Mark Stutz is here. He's our media representative this evening. Tonight, what I will do is give a very abbreviated presentation, which will address our connection to Commerce City, as well as the existing pipelines in Commerce City, give a route comparison between the 103rd and 96th Avenue alignments, talk a little bit about pipeline safety, and we'll cover land use, and in addition, I'm going to cover a couple of alternatives that were brought up at the previous City Council hearing that it was requested that I discuss, and that would be the 76th and then another alignment potentially on the south side of the Arsenal, which actually ended up being rejected by our team pretty early on. So let me begin tonight by talking just a little bit about Xcel Energy, who we are in terms of our relationship to Commerce City. And we've had on occasion testimony that indicated that maybe we're just a company that's here to just sort of take what we can get and move on. And there's nothing that could be farther from the truth. We actually have been a company for 143 years. We were started as Denver Gas, and in 1924 we became Public Service Company. Now, of course, we're known as Xcel Energy, but we are a member of the community. We looked at the people that either currently work for Xcel Energy or are retired from Xcel Energy or Public Service Company, potentially, if they retired years ago. We have at least 60. In fact, I think it's about 62 individuals and families that are members here of Commerce City. They're citizens, they're voters, they shop here, they work and play here, they're actually part of the community. I think it's also important to point out that in 2011, Xcel Energy spent more than $38 million with Commerce City suppliers. I think probably our largest, if not one of our largest pipeline contractors is located right here in Commerce City. And then, of course, we have many other contractors that we employ on a contractual basis. We paid more than $1.8 million in franchise fees to Commerce City. That's something that we do essentially every year. And as Commerce City grows and then the use of gas and electricity increases, of course, those franchise fees go up. We paid over $2 million in taxes. And another thing that's not often understood is that we set aside 1% of the overall electric gross revenues for an undergrounding fund. So we can take overhead power lines and then actually underground them for beautification processes, for various improvement programs, revitalization programs. And in fact, currently, we're undergrounding the lines around Fairfax Park. That's about a $600,000 job. We're about halfway through that. So within the next month or couple of months, we should be complete with that. And I know you're currently redeveloping Fairfax Park. I wanted to mention that. Also, I wanted to say that some new information I don't believe I mentioned last time is that due to the cost of extreme expense of this pipeline, we believe it'll be approximately a $110 million pipeline when complete. The taxation from various taxing authorities should be mentioned. And in fact, Adams 14 School District will benefit from this pipeline to the tune of $440,000 annually. 27J, $800,000 additional tax revenue annually because of this pipeline. Adams County, $750,000 annually. Commerce City, not nearly as much, but most of your revenue is not derived from this form of taxes, but nonetheless, $35,000 to Commerce City. So I just wanted to point out some of that information because sometimes it's misunderstood the kind of benefits that Xcel Energy actually brings to Commerce City or any city that is a franchise city within our Xcel Energy territory. Now, I wanted to just quickly show this one again, just to point out that there are many existing pipelines in Commerce City. And if we expanded this map, you would see that there are existing pipelines throughout the Denver metropolitan region, throughout Centennial, Cherry Creek, Littleton, Thornton, everywhere. The pipelines are pretty much, they have to be everywhere in terms of our distribution pipelines, which are shown in green. And then the other color, which I think is either blue or purple, I'm a little colorblind, but that is our transmission pipeline program in Commerce City. I think it's instructive to note that we're unaware of any issues that we've ever had with our transmission pipelines in Commerce City. And we've had transmission pipelines actually since the 1960s here in Commerce City for about 50 years. I wanted to mention something. This came up at our last hearing. And I think it's instructive, this diagram is instructive to take a look at something, and that is the depth of the pipeline. Now, we are planning to build this pipeline generally about 6 feet below the surface to the bottom of the pipeline. Top of the pipeline is 4 feet from the surface. So it's just 4 feet from the surface, which is industry standard. Now, we are actually having to build a pipeline at least 20 feet under the railroad track. Now, this is a railroad requirement. This is not an Xcel Energy requirement. The railroad owns this land. They've owned it for probably 150 years, and their requirement is that we be at least 20 feet below the railroad track. Why is that? I'm not sure we all completely know why that's the case, but I can tell you, of course, an engine is extremely heavy. There could be some structural issues relative to the engine, and I think one of the things is what happens if there's a derailment. They don't want to have an engine that maybe weighs 100 tons or a couple hundred tons actually digging into the earth and digging into a pipeline. So there are reasons that I'm quite frankly unaware of, but those are the kinds of reasons that they likely are asking us and every utility to build at least 20 feet below the train tracks. Now, in this particular case, we may be even lower than that because of obstructions. You can see from the diagram, we've got just a diagram showing underground utilities. If we have to dodge, for example, a storm sewer system, a storm sewer drain, then that'll make us have to put a sharper angle going down into the ground, and then because we can only bend pipe it to a certain degree, it may go deeper than 20 feet and then have to come up to 20 feet. But bottom line is this is a requirement of the railroads. It's not a requirement. It's not normally a requirement that we have to deal with. And in fact, again, industry standard is that we only build at least 3 feet to 4 feet underground. 3 feet is typically required. And in fact, I will tell you another point, and a couple more points, which I think bear mentioning. The deeper you go, the more difficult it is to detect gas leaks. Now, natural gas is lighter than air. If you have a natural gas leak at 3 or 4 feet below the surface, it's going to escape, it's going to dissipate, and we're going to be able to detect it more easily. So it's a safer situation. If it's very deep in the ground, gas can get out of the pipeline, and then it can migrate. And we don't know exactly where it might migrate, but it could cause some potential issues if it does migrate. And also, how do you repair a gas pipeline that's 30 feet in the ground? Well, the answer is you really don't. You have to dig a new trench and put a new pipeline in. So it's a very difficult situation. It's very dangerous to put a pipeline for construction purposes deep. And simply from a safety standpoint, it's much better to have a gas pipeline closer to the surface where if there are any gas leaks ever, they can be detected pretty quickly and managed. And we actually patrol these gas lines on a quarterly basis. And so that's why we are putting gas lines that are 4 feet from the surface. Now, in terms of the alternative route comparison, I wanted to, again, mention a few of the reasons why we think the 103rd Avenue, now, we've talked a lot about 104th Avenue, but it's really not on 104th. I think a lot of people might have the idea that we're going to be putting it down 104th. I don't think the City Council believes that, but I wanted to be sure that everyone that might be watching on television understands we're looking at an alignment that is really between 102nd and 103rd, and that is our preferred alignment. Then 96th Avenue, as you can see on this screen, is our alternative alignment. This is an alignment that we'd rather not go to. We'd rather request your approval of the 103rd, 102nd Avenue alignment. And why is that? Let me move to the next slide. Well, it's our preferred alignment because most of it is located within the fee-owned property. And I think this bears mentioning again, even though I've hit it before. The fact is that there's less risk of any third-party damage along the preferred route because we own the property. It's not an easement. It's not a right-of-way. We own the property in fee. In other words, nobody can do anything in that property. Nobody can dig in that property. Nobody's allowed to be on that property unless it's with the permission of Xcel Energy. It's very safe. There's going to be no development on that property. And in fact, it's set aside in your future land use map as a utility corridor, specifically because it already has utilities in there. We already have gas lines in there. There's already a Sinclair gas line in there. There's the electric transmission lines in that corridor. It makes sense to have it located within that corridor. As again, I said, you can see bullet point number 2, Commerce City Future Land Use Plan. Route crosses a greater amount of land zoned agricultural and less zoned PUD. I think these last two bear mentioning, and that is, I don't believe I mentioned these last time, but permit condition T, annexation agreement for 2 parcels of land, only applies to the preferred route. There are two stretches of land that I'll show you on the next slide that are currently in unincorporated Adams County. They're not within the city of Commerce City. So that would be part of the conditions that, to which we agree to have that land annexed to Commerce City. Permit condition U, license agreement for future multi-use trail applies only to the preferred route. So we have been requested that to put that to agree to that condition. We have agreed to that condition, and in fact, this could be a trail corridor as well as utility corridor in the future. Now, so the next slide shows those two areas of land that are strips of land that are not currently within Commerce City. So those pieces of land, with the approval of this route, would then be annexed into Commerce City, and we would certainly agree to and work with your staff on doing that, and we've already had many conversations to that effect. The alternative route, East 96th Avenue, why not? Why not just go down 96th Avenue? None of the route is within Public Service Company fee-owned property, and none of it's within our fee-owned property. Future plans to widen East 96th Avenue from 60 to 120 feet. Commerce City future land use plan crosses high and medium density residential, school sites, park, commercial, and office flex, and located within an existing 100-foot strip of land owned by Commerce City between Chambers and Buckley Road, but not between Tower Road and E470. Let me tell you that the real key here is that, number one, again, the route that we're suggesting and requesting that you prefer or approve as our preferred alignment is within our land that we own. It's fee-owned land. What we're talking about in this particular alignment as it goes east, especially east towards E470 and east of E470, is land that is perfect for economic growth in Commerce City. I would hate that that land is constrained, and the master planning of that land use is constrained by our pipeline. And it would be constrained to a certain degree by the pipeline. And in fact, if it's out there, we then run the risk of some, mass grading, other utilities that are being constructed and so on that might have the opportunity to damage our pipeline or even rupture the pipeline. And we don't want to see that happen. So that is a big concern for us, as well as just the future planning of this area. Let's keep it, free and clean of these kinds of encumbrances so it can be well planned and well developed in the future to provide the maximum economic benefit for Commerce City. Now, we also were asked the other day about the alternatives that we might have rejected. I'm going to cover this one, and I've got some notes here, so I'm going to go directly to the slide that shows this alignment. And this is just one of many that we rejected. When we first sat down, and this has been a couple years ago at this point, we looked at dozens of alternatives, literally dozens of alternatives, and then if you look at all the various segments that we added to those alternatives, we really looked at about 70 alternatives, including all those segments. And for a variety of reasons, it was that very detailed environmental analysis, the man-made versus the natural environment. For all those reasons, for all the different kinds of analyses that we undertook, we narrowed down the pipeline's alternatives to just the two that we're showing you. This is one of them that we looked at. In fact, when we first started talking about this, I thought, wow, that really seems like that could be, a really viable alternative. So you can see it as it comes from the north of Bar Lake, comes south, then it swings. It's a little north of I-76. If you can see that line, I think it's orange or yellow. That one, there you go. That's the line that we looked at, and then we would come down and we could tie in and connect to the I-76 corridor. Well, there are problems. I mean, it would make sense that would work, but there are problems. CDOT would not grant necessary permit for paralleling within the I-76 right-of-way. It would be great if they just let us be in their right-of-way. Well, they don't want a pipeline within their right-of-way. They'll let us cross their right-of-way, but they don't want us within their right-of-way. So that was a problem. It parallels an existing railroad, but the pipeline can't be located within the existing railroad right-of-way. Again, we can cross a right-of-way, but they don't want us to continually be paralleling and within that right-of-way. The alternative route with the least percentage adjacent to existing disturbance, including linear corridors. It affects more landowners than the preferred route. You can probably see that there are many landowners along this route, and high-density planned development where there are not existing landowners. The least amount of alternative route located within public service company easements or fee-owned property. Again, this is important because we already have property in many locations where we can put our pipeline and risk less disturbance of that land. So it's safer to put it within our existing corridors. Crosses the most area zoned high-density residential to avoid Bar Lake State Park. Of course, we couldn't go by Bar Lake State Park, and there's a lot of development that's planned in that area. No, again, this is another area that's planned for future economic growth, so we'd rather not go through that area. Limited construction workspace and locations next to the highway and railroads, and impacts to commercial businesses along highways from traffic control, road closures, and or delays. So we looked at this. We did a very thorough analysis of this and many alternatives, and it's for those reasons that this alternative was rejected. And let me move to the next one that was rejected, and that was the one that is 56th Avenue, south of the Arsenal. We looked at this one early on, and in fact, I remember discussing this at some of the public outreach meetings. In fact, I believe Councilor Douglas might have even brought this one up as an alternative at one of our outreach meetings. So let me move to this slide showing this alternative. So you can see what we're doing here is essentially coming sort of to the east side of the slide, that line there. And we're coming from the north to the south, and then swinging over. Now, we thought about, well, should we go down E470 and just sort of follow E470 down to 56th? Well, the fact of the matter is E470 is just like I-76 or I-70 or I-25. We're not allowed to be within their right-of-way, and in fact, it takes it even further to the east and further out of the alignment where we need to be. So we looked at an alternative, bringing it then to the west, and then skirting along the refuge property on the east side and then on the southern side, and then swinging around Suncor and then over to the power plant. Well, this one, again, this looks like something that might make some sense, but the one really key factor for us is from an engineering standpoint, from an engineering perspective, we needed to keep this pipeline to a maximum of 35 miles. That's because of pressure. Any longer of a pipeline than 35 miles, we have a drop in pressure, and we can't deliver that pressure that's needed to the power plant. So this route itself is over 36 miles, and that was one of the reasons that we decided against this particular route. There's limited construction workspace and locations next to highway and railroads again. Right-of-way is limited along the southern edge of the Rocky Mountain Refuge and the southern edge of Cherokee Station near the Suncor refinery. And there's higher concentration of high-density residential, commercial, and industrial south of the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. You can see that you can't see too well, but basically there's large neighborhoods that are already developed in this area, but not only just south, but also then to the west. So we had to go skirt through fairly high-density neighborhoods in Commerce City to get over to the power plant. So for those reasons, plus a key reason, which was a reason we rejected it initially, is that 36-mile distance. It's just too far, and we don't have any routes. In fact, we had rejected a number of routes that exceeded 35 miles. The preferred route that we have today is 34 miles. So I wanted to briefly mention pipeline safety again, because it's of paramount importance to Xcel Energy. It's one of our core values at our company, whether it's safety of our individuals, safety of our citizens, safety of the public in general. Very important to us. Now, pipelines are very heavily regulated by the Pipeline Hazardous Materials and Safety Administration, which is part of the Department of Transportation. In fact, we have a big code book, I think. There you go. It's a big code book, and that code book has all the engineering, at least some of the engineering, probably a lot more engineering criteria, but that's the code that we have to comply with. It's no different than a building code, a national electric code, a national plumbing code. You know, bottom line, our industry is regulated very heavily by federal codes, by codes that we have to comply with every single day. We're also regulated by the State Public Utilities Commission. Now, this particular project meets or exceeds federal state standards and safety requirements. The design exceeds pipeline wall thickness. Mainline valves, there are 2 extra mainline valves. It exceeds the depth of cover. We're required to put 3 feet cover on top. We're putting 4 feet cover on. Valve shutoffs will to be remotely operated by our gas control center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have baseline internal line inspection by that high-tech equipment that we affectionately refer to as a pig. The pipeline is odorized. Now, in some cases, gas is transmitted long distances on transmission lines without being odorized. The benefit of being odorized, because natural gas is colorless and odorless, but the benefit of being odorized is it can be detected if there is a leak. You will smell it. So that's really important to us. So we're odorizing that natural gas when we put it in at our collection facility at Fort Lupton. Patrolled on an annual, semi-annual, quarterly interval, depending on tasks such as leak survey and cathodic protection. I also wanted to tell you that we have a very robust gas line integrity management program. It's known as probably the best one in the industry. We typically spend about $20 to $30 million a year with our program, our integrity management program, and I can tell you that we take inspections and replacement of pipelines very seriously. We've already inspected about 40% of our transmission pipelines, and we plan to inspect 80% within 10 years. We also are a member of the Pipeline Association for Public Awareness. This organization provides training for first responders. So your fire district, your first responders can receive training, not only annual training, because they provide annual training, but customized training. And we'll work with the first responders on developing a plan specific to this pipeline, and then customized training could be offered essentially at any time that's needed. Pipeline industry incidents for transmission pipelines, I think the key thing here is to see the line is declining. It's going in the right direction. There are fewer and fewer, on average, fewer and fewer incidents every year. And this is with death or major injury, about 40 in 2010. I think we're probably less than that now. But we are moving in the right direction. And in fact, I looked at some interesting statistics, and it's kind of interesting to me just to think about this, but you're more likely to get struck by lightning and killed by lightning than you are to be injured by a gas pipeline rupture. That's just a fact, and we're getting safer every year as time goes on. And I think this is the final slide that I had that I wanted to present this evening, and this is your land use plan, your future land use plan. And this is another reason that we think that the gas pipeline should be located within your corridor, because you can see at about the 103rd Avenue alignment, that is where it is shown as a corridor, a utility corridor on your future land use plan. So you can look and see there to the south on 96th Avenue, around E470, around Tower and E470, you can see all those activity nodes. You can see an enormous amount of high-intensity development planned in those areas. We want to stay away from those areas. It doesn't make sense for us to be there. It doesn't make sense for us to be constraining development either along Tower Road or along the route coming from the north to the south to the east of E470, because this is a great opportunity for economic growth. What makes sense is that we comply with your future land use plan and locate it within that utility corridor. So I believe with that, my presentation is concluded, and as I mentioned, we've got a very talented and dedicated team here this evening to help me answer difficult questions. I might be able to handle some of the easy ones.
Okay, I'm going to go to the council for questions of the applicant at this time. Mr. Benson.
I've got some questions, but I'm going to wait on them. That button was pushed before.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Carson.
Mr. Gibson, thank you for coming tonight in the presentation.
Thank you.
You just had said that you would do customized training for first responders.
Yes.
Could you include surrounding cities? Because it's my understanding that something that would be that's right, for the mutual aid, something of that size, they would probably have mutual aid involved in that.
Well, you know, we'd be glad to do that. I know that we work with a number of the surrounding cities' first responders. We'd be glad to do that for any city that could potentially be impacted. Of course, this pipeline goes through, for example, Brighton. It goes through a fair amount of Brighton. We'll work with them. Adams County, Weld County, Fort Lupton, Commerce City. If Denver's impacted, certainly work with Denver as responders. So, yes, the answer is yes.
I would even like to see you reach out to, like, North Washington. I don't know if we have a mutual aid agreement with Thornton.
No.
But those other cities, and Mr. Teeter, if he agrees, could probably enhance what I'm saying.
It will be our pleasure to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other council, oh, here we go. You guys were holding out on me. Mr. Moreno.
Mr. Gibson, you mentioned that one of the reasons why the I-76 route was eliminated was, CDOT was opposed to being in the right-of-way along I-76, yet the preferred alignment goes along the right-of-way of Highway 2. So how are those two situations different?
Well, along Highway 2, there's actually some easement that was dedicated by the arsenal, by the refuge, so we're going to be within an existing easement.
Okay, so you won't be within
the right-of-way? No,
CDOT's?
we
Okay,
will not.
thank you.
Mr. Benson?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. How long has Excel owned the property that's underneath the power lines?
I don't know. Does anyone have an answer to that, Cheryl? Or? How long have we owned that property underneath the pipeline? The power lines, yeah.
Our pipeline was in there in 1995, and we were there after our power lines.
This is underneath the power lines.
Years. Well, we've owned at least 15 years. I'm not sure how long.
15 years?
At least 15 years. We could have.
That's what I was thinking. Probably 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. Could well be. I think the Sinclair line's been there actually for a long time. So I think
at that time there was nothing up there. I mean, there were no houses, there was no development, no planned development, nothing. And now you've got half of our city up there. Do you see how that situation might have changed?
Well, I see that development has changed in that area. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, when was the idea of putting the pipeline down on 103rd, when was that originated?
We looked at a number of alternatives. I would say within the last couple of years or so, we started looking at that. I should also mention that we have two existing pipelines, gas pipelines, in that corridor. One of them is a 10-inch high-pressure pipeline, and so I'm not exactly sure how long those have been there, but they're existing pipelines, as well as a Sinclair petroleum pipeline within that corridor.
But those pipelines were put there before half the city moved up there. Is that right?
I can't say. I'm not sure.
They were put there before the last 10 years?
Yes.
Okay. So I know there are a lot of other pipelines up there, but now we're talking about adding one that's, I guess, 2 1/3 times bigger, and maybe it's bigger than that because of the area of a circle. What if you went, what would be the distance, say if you came off of Highway 85, went into Brighton at 4th Street, came all the way down 4th Street, which turns into Highway 2, and then all the way down Highway 2, wouldn't that save you about 10 miles?
I don't know how many miles that would save. I can tell you that's one of the alternatives that we looked at. We looked at many alternatives.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that it's difficult to gain access to some rights-of-way. It's difficult when we have to go through multiple small parcels of property. And so for a variety of reasons, we chose the two alternatives that are before you this evening with one preferred route. But but distance is not the only thing that we look at. We looked at literally dozens of different requirements, everything from floodplain impact to wildlife to man-made infrastructure to just a wide variety of issues, agricultural lands, endangered species. We spent an enormous amount of money. In fact, the application that we submitted to be reviewed by your team is 800 pages in length. It's an extremely thorough document. So it's not just the length that we looked at. There were many things, many factors that we considered when we were looking at developing our final alignment, our final proposed alignment.
Well, you brought up the issue of length. I wasn't aware that length was an issue until you brought it up.
It was one of the issues we considered, Counselor.
All right. Has somebody at E470 told you that you cannot put this pipeline down? E470's got 75 feet of easement, maybe 50 feet of that is utility easement on both sides. And you would have to pay E470 to use that. Have you contacted anybody at E470?
I don't know who on our team might have done that. Let me also tell you about E470. It takes us out of the way. If we go further east to E470, it moves the pipeline further to the east and makes it too long of a distance to get to the power plant.
I agree with that, and you save 2 miles by going down what you call the preferred alternative. You said it was 36 going around E470. You save 2 miles by splitting Commerce City.
We save 2 miles.
We save
2 miles.
Right. And how much? I'd like to know how much you would save by going down 4th Street in Brighton and connecting with Highway, which is Highway 2.
I can't answer that. I don't know.
I mean, that's
it's not something we're willing to accept. It's something we rejected. So we're not going to.
If it's 10 miles shorter, it's going to cost you a lot less to build it, too, isn't it?
We were not looking at cost. I think I made that clear at the last public hearing. Cost is not a factor for us.
Well, I know you said that this alternative was the safest. After all this research and study and 800 pages of a proposal, the conclusion was that the 103rd Avenue was the safest.
Correct.
Safest for whom?
For the residents in Commerce City.
For the people that live along that proposed pipeline.
It's a very safe pipeline. This is a state-of-the-art pipeline.
Would you say it's the safest alternative, given that there are some other alternatives that hardly even touch Commerce City?
It's the safest alternative because we own that land. We have a number of pipelines in easements and rights-of-way, and this land we own in fee. This is fee simple title owned land. So that's the safest opportunity for us to locate a pipeline.
I understand that that's one of the arguments, that nobody will be digging there if it's your property. You'd be the only ones, and I think that's a good point. There's no doubt about that. I guess those are all the questions I have right now, but there are other ways to shorten this pipeline, get it out of a place where it could endanger our citizens, and I think I brought up the last time. You've got this little preschool there at Landmark and 104th. Kids, some of them can't even walk yet. That's the closest structure, except maybe for the little strip centers along there. This little preschool. It's about 250 feet away from this pipeline. And I just don't like that. I mean, I haven't liked it from the first time that you came in here and presented it. We've talked about this. I've asked you, why don't you give us some money maybe for some parks up there to make people feel good about this? We'll call it Excel Park. I haven't heard anything back from you on that. Make people feel good about this. Do something for us. I mean, I know you're going to pay a lot of taxes to Adams County. We get some of that money, but Commerce City doesn't get a lot of that money, or $35,000 maybe directly. It's just not I don't think that we can be bribed into doing this, although maybe we can. But that's all I have right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
May I respond? Let me respond to a couple of points. And one of those is that the inference, the direct inference that we're putting a pipeline right through an area that, well, it's developed. It's fully developed, and it's going to be essentially a danger to your citizens. That's what you're essentially telling me today. And I've heard that over and over and over and over again. And I can tell you that we have pipelines, not only current pipelines throughout Commerce City, transmission pipelines and distribution pipelines. We have pipelines throughout our entire service territory. If we were to take any map in Denver or throughout Colorado where we serve the population, you would see an extensive network of transmission and distribution pipelines. And these distribution and transmission pipelines are very safe. They're very safe. In fact, they're so safe that there's no distance that you're supposed to be located from them if you're building a structure, a building. They're very safe. And let me also address that school, because that's something I looked into, Councilor Benson, since our last meeting. And I'll tell you something. There's a pipeline that's 100 feet away from that school, 100 feet away. It's a 10-inch pipeline at about the same operating pressure of this pipeline, And they knew about it when they bought that property. They got a contiguous area report they had to sign when they bought that property. They knew that pipeline was there. They didn't decide not to buy the property. They weren't concerned about it. And another thing about that school is we've notified them time and again about meetings. They've never come up if they were interested in opposing our project. I would would have hoped that we would have heard from them, but we haven't. Not one time we heard from them.
Well, those are 10-inch pipelines.
At a very high pressure within 100 feet of the school.
Right, same pressure. We're talking about a 24-inch pipeline, and I could do the math and figure out what the difference is, but I think that
Okay.
I figured out last time that if you had a leak, 750,000 cubic feet of gas would leak out before it got to atmospheric pressure. Now, at a 10-inch pipeline, I guess there's going to be a lot of gas, but it's going to be less than that. And I can't tell you right now what the comparative area is for a 10-inch and a 24-inch. I guess I can...
Well, I don't really know what that means, if I could, Mr. Mayor. I don't know what that means in terms of anything. Yeah, there's going to be gas that leaks out. Let me also indicate to you that the development that's in Reunion was developed around a pipeline, around those pipelines. They were already there. We're proposing to put this pipeline in, but the land developed around existing pipelines.
I'm going to do this calculation here in just a second, and
I'm going to move on, Mr. Benson.
no, go
I'll
ahead.
come back to you.
It's just pi r squared is all I have to do.
Mr. Douglas.
Thank you, President, for coming back.
Thank you.
Now, I know, when it comes to the cost per mile for a gas line, I'm not sure what that is. I know for a water pipeline, it's like $25,000 a mile. So can you tell me what the cost is per mile for XL gas
Well,
line,
approximately,
24-inch?
it's a $110 million project. It's about a 35-mile line. It's about, about $3 million a mile, approximately? About $3 million a mile.
Okay. You say money isn't in question here.
No, it's not.
The extra 2 miles taken out of the safety area. I mean, coming down 103rd, but then come down inside the Arsenal there. That'd be a much more safer route for our citizens. And we're talking about our citizens here in Commerce City. And why does it have to come through that route in the first place to impact? I mean, you should be looking at least amount of residents that this is going to impact. And coming down 103rd, that's going to affect the most. And then come down 96, I know we have developers' letters all stating that they don't want it down there because it's going to mess up their future growth. But that's where the growth is going to be happening, and we do need some gas lines there. But just through all your analysis and everything, 76, you're saying how hard that would be to come down to even 85 and coming around. That's something that you would have to take up with Bright and everyone else down Highway 85. But you're giving us a lot of options here. But 104th and 96, that just impacts too many residents. And you identified other routes. I think you guys should really consider coming down 85 and finding, working with those other cities. Because that's going to be the most impact of right now, coming down 103rd. You talk about the depth being 3 feet, and you guys can go 4 feet. I had asked last time you were here if you can go down 30 feet by the schools and everything, and the high-densed areas, and you said no, that this is the safest pipe. And then this corridor here, it's going to be safe because there's the least amount of third-party hitting this. And I know you have a lot of experts here and everything, but if that's all you guys come up with, that doesn't make sense to me.
Let me do this, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I think we have a slide. Do we have a slide on 85? I think we may have a slide. And I want to talk about 80. So there it is, 85. I think that's the last slide I have. But before I mention that, and I know the reason that we'd like to, this needs to be in front of the public, of course, and on television. But I did want to indicate that we'd be glad to do a study session, even a study session here in this chambers, and look at all the alternatives. And we've looked at literally dozens and dozens and dozens of alternatives. And so we're down to looking at some of the last options that I think the council would look at. But we could show you very clearly that we have looked at really everything. We've done an exhaustive study of the alignments. Now, if you look at this line coming down 85, I'm just going to read you the points, the reasons that we actually rejected this, okay? The alternative route crosses a large amount of high and low-density residential zoned land. At least 15 residences are located within 75 feet of the route center line, the most of any alternative segment. It crosses the most floodplains, and it crosses the most wetlands. Limited construction workspace locations next to highways and railroads. It crosses heavily populated urban areas which restrict right-of-way widths and impacts commercial businesses along highways from traffic control, road closures, and other delays. So those are the reasons. We did look at 85. We looked at the 56. We looked at the 76. We looked at, like I say, we did an exhaustive search of alignments and an exhaustive study. And we have reasons that we rejected the other potential alternatives. So now we're down to the two alternatives that we're presenting on this evening. The preferred alternative, which is the 103rd Avenue alignment, plus the 96th Avenue alternative. So, thank you.
Well, and then you have the 56 route where you said it's going to add another 2 miles. Well, you know, I'm sure you're aware of UE compression. They do custom engineering gas compression systems, and I'm sure they could help you out with that extra 2 miles. So coming down that Route 56, to me, with the technology we have right now, and we have a leader in that technology that is made expanded here in Commerce City, I think that could be possible with today's technology. So I'm not, you know, like I said, 96 and 103rd, I'm not buying that. And then the extra 2 miles that you're saying, I think you could get some help from UE compression on that extra 2 miles.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond.
You may.
There again, it's not just the 2 miles. I mean, the 1 mile over our maximum distance is important. But there are other factors, other reasons we didn't go there. It's not just that distance. It's the other factors that I mentioned a little bit earlier tonight.
And just one more thing I want to state too. I know you're saying about the franchise fees, and you know that's on the ballot. So if that doesn't pass, we won't be getting that extra dollars. So,
correct.
Thank you.
Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you for coming back, Mr. Gibson, and bringing the supporting cast tonight. I had several questions, a couple of which have been addressed, but the last, or the two that I still have, relate to your slide on the incidents per year, and an item that's come up a few times, which is why we don't want to do 96th and Tower. On the first question, incidents per year, is there any correlation, and it wasn't on the slide, I don't know if you have this handy, but any correlation to the year of construction for these incidents? So as we see this coming down over time, is there any correlation to age of construction and incident? In other words, is this coming down because the older pipelines are being phased out or replaced with new pipelines? What's the cause behind this?
Well, I think
decline?
that's certainly part of it. But I think in addition, we have better techniques to find leaks today that we didn't have in the past. We have new standards relative to integrity management inspections. We as a company are very much a leader in integrity management. That is inspecting our existing transmission pipelines to be sure that they are functioning properly and in a safe manner. I think we're going to see that line dip to a much greater degree, may even bend downward instead of be a straight line down, as you kind of see on this graph. So there are a number of reasons that it is trending in the right direction. We expect it to continue going in that direction.
All right. So we think that incidents are declining because of the increase in your practices and improvement in your techniques.
Technology and so on, yes.
As far as the desire to not locate at the 96th and Tower corridor, and we've heard from, obviously, the development community, and I think this is going to be a key question, or continue to be a key question for the citizens. You know, it seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean, we've got nothing there. We could put a pipeline in and build to the pipeline versus building right alongside the built environment through the 102nd corridor. And I know we've heard about the the fee-owned land and a number of factors. I'm trying to break this down into terms that everybody in the neighborhood is going to understand. And so if you were to, I'm almost envisioning sort of a Consumer's Digest comparison of A and B. I seem to get, I mean, obviously I get the fact that you own the land, and I think that the key driver there is the fact that it's not going to be disrupted unless you're doing the disruption or working on one of the other items that are making their way through that corridor. Is that the bottom line in terms of the 104th alignment versus 96th?
Third-party damage is the number one concern we have about pipeline safety, third-party damage. That's why it makes sense to put it in that fee-on corridor.
So if we look at your data here on incidents, is there any correlation here to which of these were third-party fault incidents? And I mean, does that data exist? In other words, that would make sense, right? If this is going down because you're taking better control or otherwise, sure, you protect the pipeline and it's going to reduce that risk.
A large percentage is related to third-party damage. I don't know the detailed statistics, but a large percentage really is.
So objectively, you're looking for anything you can do to avoid going through an area where that third-party risk is going to be present.
We are.
I don't have any further questions at the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Benson.
Thank you again. It looks to me like a 10-inch pipeline has a cross-section of about 77 square inches. A 24-inch gas pipeline has a cross-section of almost 450 square inches, about 6 times as many. So wouldn't you agree that a 24-inch pipeline is 6 times more dangerous than a 10-inch pipeline?
No, I would not agree. No, I would not agree with that.
It's got 6 times as much gas in it, though, doesn't it?
We don't build dangerous pipelines. It's not a dangerous pipeline. In fact, the pipeline we're proposing to build is with state-of-the-art materials, state-of-the-art steel, as well as welding techniques that are welded by one contractor and X-ray inspected by another. We have hydrostatic pressure testing. We have inline inspection tools. We have quarterly leak surveys. This is an extra valves, extra mainline valves, extra wall thickness. This is a very safe state-of-the-art pipeline.
I understand, but I mean, you've told us several times that we have these 10-inch pipelines, but the fact is that a 24-inch gas pipeline is 6 times bigger, capable of transmitting 6 times the gas that a 10-inch pipeline. I mean, it's just geometry.
Well, it depends on the pressure, too.
All right. I'm assuming the same pressure.
Okay.
It's 6 times more square inches on a cross-section. Where does the gas start from exactly? Fort Lupton?
We collect it in Fort Lupton.
And where does it go from Fort Lupton to get down here?
Where does it go? Well,
yeah, do you have a map that shows exactly
we have an
where it
overall
goes
map. I don't know if we have an. It comes south of Fort Lupton. It is on the east or west side of Loch Buoy. Comes south to the Brighton area. It goes through the eastern part of the city of Brighton. Brighton is, in fact, impacted. In fact, I have a public hearing before the Brighton City Council tomorrow evening on this project. And then, I'm not sure we have a slide. And then it goes through, you can see on some of the slides where it comes down through unincorporated Adams County on the east side of Bar Lake.
How much of that is built right now?
Well, how much of it is built? Well, what do you mean in terms of built?
Coming out of Fort Lupton, has any part of that pipeline been started at this point in time?
It has not been started.
Okay. Well, again, wouldn't you save a lot of distance by just coming straight down? Fort Lupton's on Highway 85. Come straight down Highway 85, move over to 4th Street in Brighton, come straight down to Highway 2, and you got it made, and you probably save about 10 miles.
We've rejected that alternative.
I know you've rejected it. I guess I still don't know why, though. It seems to me like it would save you a lot of distance, cost you about 2/3 as much to build it. Maybe you have to pay a little bit more for the rights-of-way because you own part of the right-of-way, and I'm thinking that seems to be the driving force behind this, is that you already own this property, and it's going to be cheaper for you to build it on your own property. At least that's the impression that I'm getting,
Mayor.
but anyway, that's all I had.
No, it's not a fact of being cheaper. We actually can through rate recovery, recover our costs on this project. It's not a matter of being cheaper. It's a matter of being safer. And if it's in our property, we control that property. and it is a safer pipeline when it's in our property.
Okay, see no one else. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the audience, and remember, we're taking new testimony. So for those of you who are here tonight to speak that have already spoken last time, you're more than welcome to come up and speak, as long as it's new information. I'm going to start off the list here of folks that signed up for pipeline discussion. Dean and Violet Frizzell. Come on up. Do you not want to talk about the pipeline? Did you want to speak?
Violet Frizzell, 8786 Ulster Street. We signed in because we didn't know what was going to happen.
Okay.
If something came up, then we would want to say something, but at this point, what they've discussed tonight does not affect us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy McIntyre. Good evening.
Good evening. Kathy McIntyre, 17503 East 104th Way, Commerce City. Last Friday, while most of us were fixated on prayers for the safe return of Jessica Ridgway, there was another news story in Colorado. It was a news story about a family in Castle Rock and their 4 children. The mother of that family and 4 small children were blown sky high while watching television on the 2nd floor of their home. Thank God they've all survived and they're going to be okay. But their house was blown to smithereens, along with several other houses in that neighborhood. That happened because of a natural gas pipeline explosion. It was not a 24-inch transmission. So this was a distribution pipe, much like what Mr. Gibson keeps saying is all over our neighborhoods up there. Just because he says it's safe doesn't mean that it's safe. We really need to start looking at some truth and some common sense. On Excel Pipeline's website today, I got to read all about how coal was so clean. This is 2012. I thought coal wasn't so clean, and I thought that's why we had to have this 24-inch transmission pipeline running right through the middle of our neighborhood, dissecting it. There's paragraph after paragraph after paragraph on Excel's pipeline talking about how safe coal is. Coal ash has been determined to be non-hazardous based on well-established scientific criteria designed to protect human health and the environment. The APA has confirmed this on multiple occasions. So why are we so willing to get rid of coal so quickly? So now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, then they're going to say gas isn't correct. So I don't trust them anymore. I don't trust them to tell me the truth. Because on their website today, they're saying coal's okay. But they're here tonight saying, we're willing to come in, disrupt your neighborhoods, put something very dangerous right down a road that we all drive up and down, right by our schools, right by our homes, and say that's the safest route. Why do we need special training for first responders? I don't remember any solar panel installation, including the one on the Civic Center here or the solar farm in Brighton, where we needed special training for first responders, for solar panels, or for wind turbines. So if it's so safe, why do we need that? Also, Mr. Gibson keeps saying over and over, it's third-party damage, it's third-party damage. Of course, Excel is beyond reproach, because every time there's an accident that Excel Energy is involved in, they always seem to be able to worm their way out of it by blaming some third-party contractor or some subcontractor that they have hired. Well, if it's so safe being on their property, are they going to fence it? Are they going to fence this pipeline clear from Fort Lupton all the way down to the Cherokee plant? Because I drive over that every single day. I walk over it every single day. So if I decide that I'm going to go plant a tree there, or, oh, now they want to put a trail, maybe the city can plant a tree there and hit the pipeline. No, it's not safe. They're not fencing it in. And just because they own it does not keep people off of it. That is a ridiculous argument. Just 2 summers ago, we had somewhat of a collapse of 104th Avenue. It was a Sunday. It was really, really hot. And anybody who lives in the northern range of Commerce City will remember this day. I remember it because it was my granddaughter's birthday party. United Power came to City Council after that. We were without power for 10, 12 hours. And that was because of a road collapse interfering with a utility along 104th Avenue. So that can't happen with this pipeline. There's no place in Commerce City for this pipeline, period. End of story. It's not needed. It's not wanted. They can go somewhere else. Too darn bad if it's not easy for Xcel Energy. They said if you rejected their proposal that they would go to the PUC. Well, let them go to the PUC, because lately the PUC seems to be doing a pretty good job of holding Xcel Energy accountable. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Let me, just a minute, I'll give you another chance to respond after I get through with the audience. Okay? But I'm going to get through the audience comments first. Next person, Jody Bricky. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm Jody Brecky. I live at 17087 East 106th Avenue, Commerce City, Colorado, 80022. I would like to, first of all, start by thanking those of you who made the very wise decision last week to look out for citizens of Commerce City, Mayor Ford, Councilman McEldowney, Benson, JD. I appreciate the fact that as I watched the video, it really seemed like you really cared about the safety of us citizens, and I greatly appreciate that. I want to reiterate the statement that Kathy made. The fact that Mr. Gibson has offered customized training for first responders does not make me feel better. In fact, it makes me feel a whole lot worse. Customized training for first responders indicates that something very dangerous or catastrophic could take place in my neighborhood. So I would like to reiterate that fact. I'd also like to reiterate the fact that I believe the exact quote was, swinging around the arsenal and looping around Suncor. That makes me very nervous. I think it was the exact words that he used, which in my mind are quite ridiculous. In light of the video that I was able to watch online, in light of the fact that I've been able to watch his presentation again tonight, I have some additional questions in regard to this pipeline. First, how much does Xcel know about the toxic plumes surrounding the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, and what kind of considerations have been given in terms of the special circumstances of the arsenal? Another question. Land use regulations state that there is no drilling within 1 mile radius of the Rocky Mountain Arsenal. I would think that this would also pertain to any type of pipeline that would be installed or running through a 1 mile radius of the arsenal as well. My other questions are these. Why did Primrose not know about this pipeline? I went myself to the school and asked the director on staff the day that I went what they thought about this pipeline. They were shocked when I brought them the permit and when I brought them the information that we had pulled up on it. I'd also like to know why Landmark Academy, which is blocks away from where the pipeline will be, had no idea that this pipeline was even being considered. According to Mr. Gibson, he had everything wrapped up. The school districts, they knew all about it and they were fine with it. The principal at Landmark was appalled and had no idea. Why does Xcel think that I would care more about the supposed $1.3 million in economic benefits over the obvious safety risks to my children? Is Xcel willing to guarantee that there will be no explosions? Is Xcel willing to post a catastrophic bond to cover potential catastrophes? Are they willing to do that? I keep hearing how safe this is. I would like to see some action behind those words. If it is so safe, guarantee us that there's not going to be a catastrophic incident, and I'd like to know if they're willing to put up $1 billion catastrophic bond. Just a question. Also, am I the only one in this room who thinks that placing a high-speed pipeline underneath a daycare is a complete disregard for the precautionary principle? I'd like to close by just making a couple of statements. First of all, really the big burning question, first of all, tonight is, do we provide for the health and the safety and the welfare of Commerce City citizens, or do we provide for Xcel Energy's interests or their bottom lines? That's really the question tonight. You know, and I think, Mayor Ford, you said it best. You know, why us? Why are we sitting here discussing having a pipeline come through our city, blocks with underneath practically a daycare? Why are we even considering that? Why do we entertain that? Figure something out. Figure something else out. You know, Mr. Gibson has mentioned that he's got the brightest and the best, as Mr. McEldowney said, cast of characters behind him. Figure something else out. This is ridiculous that we have to stand here with a complete lack of regard for our children's safety and discuss this. There is no precautionary principle coming into place here, and that is offensive to me. I'd like to also close by saying that this high-speed pipeline, if it is put into this neighborhood, I can tell you is going to be a very big detriment, and I can tell you that myself included, along with a number of other families, will begin to consider whether this is the city that we need to raise our children in. I can't foresee me coming to city council every 6 months saying, please, protect my children, protect my schools. You know, this is getting to the point where there are many families who are considering whether or not this is a safe community to live in. And I know that, you know, just in the block that Councilman McEldowney lives in, we have people who have left because of their concerns for the safety of this community. We have people who have put their house up for sale, they've taken it down, they've put it up. This is a huge concern, and I'm telling you right now that this will be a deciding factor for a number of families, regardless of the cost, if we stay in this community and if we choose to raise our children here. And that's the bottom line. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'll call David Stallsworth. Good evening.
David Stallsworth, 8110 Brighton Road. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Kathy McIntyre touched on the house down in Castle Rock. Now, nothing was mentioned about the pressure. Inside of a home, it is mere ounces, like 4 or 5 ounces of pressure that comes into your home. It's not 750 or 1,020. Another question in my mind, somewhere along the pressure area, natural gas turns into a liquid. Does anyone have any idea at what point natural gas becomes a liquid? Because from a liquid to vapor, it's about 600 times more volume in vapor than there is in liquid. So are we talking about pumping liquid in this line, or are we talking about pumping vapor, which would make one big difference? Okay, they touched on Interstate 76. They don't want this pipeline along Interstate 76. There's no homes there. You would affect, in rush hour traffic, you would affect a few people. When you're running this through a residential area, you're affecting people's homes. You're affecting a lot of people in a lot smaller area than you are on Interstate 76. The railroad track, you have to really be careful going around a railroad track. There's many things here he touched on that don't, then he wants us to think this thing is safe. I don't know. I'm confused. If they was to build a power plant out at 104th and E470, they wouldn't have to run this pipeline. They've already got the overhead power lines. They could backfeed them. And a lot of your building expansion is going to go east. We don't have much more expansion coming back this way. Your expansion is going to go north, east, and south. So why not just build a power plant out there and save several $1 million building this power line? Cherokee power plant, they're going to have to retrofit this thing to burn natural gas instead of burning coal. And Cherokee power plant, it's been there for many years. How much of that needs to be replaced anyway? I think that's touched on most of what I have in mind. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go to the audience. I took care of the list that I had. Is there anyone with new testimony that would like to come forward? Please state your name and address for the record, and welcome.
Guillermo Serna, 14122 East 102nd Place, Commerce City, Colorado. Money was mentioned of what Commerce City gets on assistance supposedly to the community. When I used to work and I wasn't retired, I'd go to the tech center. And you know what those companies did? They would hire juniors and seniors to come into their computer rooms so that they can touch technology. We are a blue-collar community. So is Excel, in a sense. How many of our two schools do they say, go to their school board and say, hey, let us hire your kids during the summer so that they can experience on the opportunities that are here for when you graduate in engineering, electronic engineering, and all of that? Not much. This is what we're looking for, not necessarily monies, but giving the training so that kids can get energized and know that there's a future. Not just saying, hey, here's $50, go buy something. It's not that. That's what we mean when we say community participation. How many of their people participate to mentor a child that may be at risk, that may be needing a big brother here in District 14 or in 27J? He didn't mention that. We are also part of the environment. He mentioned environment. We human beings are part of the environment. Birds, little animals, rats, they can't speak, but we can. And that's why we're here. I want them to be successful, but I also want them to give back to the community. And if he hadn't said, if you want to come down 96th Avenue, we can do it. He himself said it at the last meeting. We never said 103rd. The company itself said 104th. So we get little things that go around and round and round. All this information, I don't think that the planning committee ever received this information the way he's presenting it now. And why didn't they present that to you? So that you could be well, not trained, but at least given the knowledge of what is happening. That's all we're saying. They can't we're in a high communication world now. They just can't write things on paper and say, this is what we're going to do. Safety. Take a look at the safety. If we're saying we're not safe enough, then by God, they better meet that standard so that we can feel safe when this thing is done, so that we can sell our homes. And I'm talking about our realtors and contractors and all that type of stuff, so that we can build our schools and have our kids feel safe. And we know that they're going to be there's a possibility of them surviving whatever. But when they just come and say nothing, okay? Today he brought 3 or 4 more people. Why didn't he bring them down the first time? And why weren't they there in some of these other meetings? We need more information. We participated with the growth, $300 million in infrastructure. I was against it. But people convinced the public here in Old Commerce City that, hey, it's a good thing. We're bringing new thinkers. We're bringing new populations. Our kids are starting to come back. That's what we're looking for. Industry, we want industry. But we want them to work with us, to be successful with us. Not to just say, it's our property, we're going to do whatever we want. Work with us. If you can bring it down 96 and the possibility of it being safe, and they can make sure that it is a little bit safer somehow, some way, then by God, he keeps saying that it's not about the money, so that they can make it better, so that we can feel safer and make it easier on you guys with a lot of respect to make good decisions. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify?
Good evening, Council. My name is Michael Gates. I am with the law firm of Foster, Graham, Milstein, and Kalisher in Denver, but I'm here on behalf of Cali Management, who is the property manager for SMT Properties and a host of other property owners that own property adjacent to E470, as well as Center Development, JF Companies, and Gateway American Resources. Now, all of my clients have one thing in common, and that is that they are affected by this pipeline, one way or the other. Whether you put it on the 103rd Avenue corridor or whether you put it on 96th Avenue corridor, they're affected by this. So my purpose here is very limited tonight, and that is to just simply urge you to look at the first question you have to answer, which is, do you believe that this pipeline is safe? Because if you believe that this pipeline is safe, then there's fundamentally no difference between putting it on 103rd and putting it on 96th other than economics of scale. There's already development on 96th. You're planning to develop that area. So this alternative that's been presented to you of the 96th Avenue corridor is no alternative at all. You're either pushing it off in some of these areas to a later date to have this exact same discussion about safety concerns, or you're just directly affecting the safety of your citizens, but on a lesser scale than coming down 103rd, 104th. Now, you've heard from Excel, and I'm not going to pass on whether it's safe or not safe. I can say that, in my experience as an attorney, it's a very highly regulated field, installing these pipelines, especially in this present age. The technology is certainly different than it existed even 10 years ago. But that aside, the plan to come down 96 means putting that pipeline 4 feet deep on my client's properties, where you're planning to develop that property to put in residential areas, shopping centers, put in schools. I think there's a high school already planned along that corridor. That means that you're going to have third-party construction next to this high velocity pipeline. When Excel has presented you with an option, if you believe that the pipeline, once installed, is safe, has presented you with an option where there's not going to be any third-party development on that land. So I would say, if you're going to look at this, you don't have an option between two alternatives here tonight. Pass the let Excel have their pipeline on 103rd, or don't let them have it at all. But pushing it to 96 is not a solution. It's not a viable solution. You're only going to affect economic growth in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I saw Ms. Douglas. You want to come forward, please? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Members of council, my name is Christy Douglas. I live at 10970 Unity Parkway, Commerce City, Colorado 80022. I've been spending a lot of time researching pipelines, 24-inch pipelines, the effect it has on the communities across the nation. And it looks like it's a relatively new process where they're trying to put it into areas where it's populated. There's a lot of interstate pipeline that's already been installed. Actually, a lot of it many years ago. Some of those are 30-inch and more in diameter. And some of them are getting old. I looked to see the location of the Cherokee plant and looked at the different possibilities, and something that only David has really brought up, David Stallsworth, who was up previously, mentioned is the southern part of Commerce City that this would be going through as well. And it's as densely populated. I just don't see why we can't look at an alternative, as Jim mentioned, Councilman Benson, going down Highway 2. If you need to shorten it up, put it 2 miles closer from Fort Lupton, and that would solve your problem there. And the other thing I wanted to mention was that I got my hands on this report that was book stapled. It took me about 15 minutes to get the book staples out that was given to the Planning Commission. And this is quite an interesting report. And I don't know. I could poke holes through it, all the way through it. I just wanted to mention that I don't think this was a very good presentation to give to the citizens of our community. So, to go on, just a couple days ago, well, it was actually October 2nd, in Pennsylvania, they put into operation a full commercial new pipeline that was also 24 inches in diameter, a 30-mile long one. And just after it went into operation, I guess there was some kind of boom that was created by a faulty sensor. And the Director of Investor Relations came to the rescue as far as their version of what happened with PR to the community. And it sounds like it just scared these people half to death. He said, "This is a very important project for us and for producers in the region," he said. "It's been long anticipated and we're glad to see it in service." They're glad to see it in service because they're making money off of it. However, the people who live in the area don't seem to be too pleased with it. At least one of the residents near the facility saw vapor plumes and noticed a distinct smell in the air. Milborn, who is the PVR Director of Investor Relations, said he did not know whether anything was released. Kunkel, the fire chief, Kunkel Fire Chief Jack Dodson said he talked to the station supervisor Sunday afternoon. This happened early on a Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m., who told him there was a malfunction. The fire detection system erroneously showed a fire at the facility, and it triggered the emergency shutdown. The bad part was that the fire chief said that they had never been trained on any of this, and no one called 911. And so they kind of just blew it off as not being anything. So if you think that something can't happen, this was a faulty sensor. It doesn't always mean that technology is going to work. I don't know if anybody knows why they added odor to the natural gas, which you cannot smell. It's because in 1937 there was an explosion in a school where there's well, I would say in some reports it says over about 300 students, and other reports say 425 were killed on a Thursday afternoon just before they were going to be let out for a 3-day weekend. One of the ironic statements I found from this report was that reportedly a blackboard at the destroyed school was found that read, "Oil and natural gas are East Texas's greatest natural gifts. Without them, the school would not be here, and none of us would be learning our lessons." That was on a blackboard that was found in the rubble after the explosion. I'm sure technology and experience has created a safer environment than they had in 1937. But I guess I wanted to bring that up just to point out that the school was built because of money that they got from oil and gas. But these people are still talking about this tragedy that happened that long ago. What does money buy? I don't know. One of the things that I found from the Detroit Free Press, printed on September 27, 2010, says the headline was, "Many live next to dangerous pipelines in Michigan. No rules to stop them from being next to homes." The concluding statement that was made in this article was, "There are a lot of things that can't be undone," Weimer says. "But from here on out, we should think about not letting pipelines and people get too close together from the start." Please, it sounds like, no, the developers don't want it, we don't want it. Put it somewhere away from people. And figure out a way to do it, or don't do it, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to testify in favor or against, or for more information concerning this pipeline that we're here to discuss tonight?
Jeff Tarr, I'm on 125th Avenue. I'm a Colorado native, and I'd like to point out that each and every one of you here today has used your cell phone. Cell phones made by plants using electricity, being fed by either coal or natural gas. We're worried about the safety of these pipelines. It's going to rupture. Somebody's going to dig and hit it. Let's look at the coal option. How many people have died because a coal train ran over their car? More than gas pipeline ruptures. Bringing it very localized and close to home, the safety results are staggering. You've seen in the presentation, the numbers cause concern. I would like to pat Colorado on the back. We are way ahead of the national average. In the research I've done, May 18th, 2011, by the Colorado PUC, they have reported that since 2001, the fatalities resulting in natural gas distribution is 1. That means in 2001 there were 0 fatalities. There were only 4 incidents. In the year 2002, there were 0 fatalities. This is Colorado. In the year 2003, there were 0 fatalities, again caused by gas distribution incidents. In the year 2004, there were 0. In the year 2005, there were 0. This goes on. Year 2008, 1 fatality as a result of a gas distribution incident. 1 fatality between the time period of 2001 to 2010. Let's compare that to what everybody else thinks is safe in their environment. In 2011, fruit, specifically cantaloupe, grown in Colorado, our home state. 28 people woke up in the morning, ate their fruit for breakfast, and later died as a result of it. Eating cantaloupe for breakfast is more dangerous than a high-pressure natural gas line in Colorado. Results are facts. Everybody will sit here, use their cell phones. You can see me because we have electricity powering these lights. Progress and technology is a result of our times. It is a necessary evil. There will be collateral. It is acceptable in Colorado because the numbers are staggering percentage below the national average for incidents, deaths, and safety issues in this field. To my understanding, this pipeline that goes through your precious city will benefit you. The power generated from this power plant will keep your cell phones charged at night. They'll keep your children warm in their beds. They'll keep power to their schools so that they can learn. They'll keep the crosswalks powered so they can see when to walk and when not to walk. We as a people have the power to make our own decision to live off the grid. Living off the grid means away from all of this danger and hazard. However, every single person in this community has volunteered and taken it upon themselves to move into this community, knowing that there are power lines, there are highways, there are gas lines, there are trains, and those are all dangerous. And they still elect to move into this community. Everybody knows about the arsenal. Everybody knows it's dangerous. Who's to blame? Ourselves. We're going to put this gas pipeline into commission somewhere. Are you willing to pass the buck and put it off on someone else, knowing that you are going to benefit equal or greater than somewhere else that it's going to go? Questions you have to ask yourself. Let's look at some other numbers. I doubt anyone here walked to this meeting. Yet, in the last 10 years, 1 death has occurred from a gas pipeline in Colorado. 1. But in the year 2010, approximately 448 people have died from auto accidents in Colorado. You put yourself in danger walking out your front door more so than having this pipeline go through your community to power your cell phones, warm your children's bed at night. Safety? Which is safer, eating fruit in Colorado or living next to a pipeline? We can all be the devil's advocate and say everything is not safe. What is safe anymore? I wasn't going to bring it to the table, but it's already been mentioned a couple times. Apparently, it is safer to have this pipeline, this 24-inch pipeline, 10-inch pipeline, 6-inch pipeline. Doesn't matter what it is. It's safer to go through your community than to let your child walk to school alone. Those are facts. We all know the numbers. You can do the research. Your concern is for pressure on a smaller pipeline versus this larger one. I ask you, for an example, you have a mountain bike tire that has 20 pounds of air pressure in it. Okay? Now you have a Volvo car with 20 pounds of air pressure in it. If that gets ruptured, just because there's more volume but less pressure, how much more dangerous is it than a mountain bike tire rupturing? Same pressure, different volume. It's a crude analogy. You can crunch the numbers, do your pi squared, you can figure it out, you can say it's 6 times more dangerous. Well, I can sit here and tell you that it's 448 more times dangerous to get in your car every day than to allow this pipeline to go through your community. I think it's very hypocritical to say, don't put it in our community, when right now you are currently using the benefit from that pipeline that's going to feed that power plant. Your light is on. Your light is on. Your light is on. You can read your notes. You can see the presentation because of the electricity derived from that. It's easy to say, it's too dangerous. We're not willing to take the risk. Well, apparently you are. You moved into a community that has technology. Unless you're all willing to become, I don't know, off the grid, move to an Amish community, you have all elected to be part of this and assume the risk. Third-party safety. I do not now. I have never worked for Xcel Energy, Public Service Company of Colorado. I am not a direct employee. But I can sit here and say, in my own mind, that they are absolutely safe. The numbers across the country that develop those statistics that you saw are higher than Colorado. Pat Colorado on the back for being safer. You want to mock the fact that they brought their puppets with them. I'll tell you what, apparently they're better than the puppets in other states because other states have higher deaths related to these pipelines in Colorado. Let me remind you, in 10 years, 1 death in Colorado. Apparently the team sitting right over here is better at their job than other parts of the country. Why wouldn't we trust them? The numbers speak for themselves. Third party is a danger. I will put third-party incidents on the shoulders and the responsibility of everybody on this council, the previous council and the future council. They build their pipelines to be safe. They try to make sure that they're in places that are safe from third-party damage. They have instituted in the law, call before you dig. They offer that as a free service. They could charge everyone. It's a free service, call before you dig. Because they're trying to protect third-party damage. City Council and other entities will allow permits for development in areas with these pipelines. That is the danger. Limit progress, limit growth. We have what we need. If you limit from here on out and say, wow, it was a giant concern in 2012 that this pipeline could kill a lot of people, maybe we should think about not issuing permits to build that community there, to not let that school be built within 250 feet of that. Maybe we should, for the sake of our own community, not allow this growth and think of the safety of what we have and not the extra dollars we can make as a city. Schools within 250 feet. You can think of the safety of the kids all you want. I would rather have 5 of these pipelines run under my house than get on an airplane. Airplanes cause catastrophes. 400 people can die from being on an airplane. How many more can die when they crash into your community? How far are you from an airport? You are under a flight pattern of an airport. That is more dangerous by statistics than these pipelines. We can think about the children. We can buckle them up in their safety seats. We can give them sippy cups so straws don't jab their throats. Your family pet will cause more damage to your child in the next 100 years than this pipeline. And I believe it. Everyone can contest it. Do a little more research. Find out what the safety factor really is. Being scared is not an excuse. Go one step further. one fatality in Colorado in 10 years from these pipelines. We're not talking one pipeline through Commerce City. We're not talking one pipeline through Brighton. We're not talking one pipeline through Pueblo. We're talking the entire state of Colorado. One person has died in 10 years. How can you stand here as a community, as a city, and say it's dangerous? Thank you.
Before you leave, sir, I need to get your address for the record, please.
4885 West 125th Avenue in Broomfield.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that hasn't had the chance to testify that would like to testify? Seeing no one else, Mr. Gibson, would you like to answer some of the questions that were posed this evening?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. There were quite a few issues raised, and I think many of these have already been responded to, but I wanted to say that we appreciate the input, the comments from the residents. We take those very seriously. In fact, that's the reason that we held 4 public outreach meetings. We're only required to hold 1. We held 4 public outreach meetings for this. We spent many, many months of planning, a lot of analysis. We had a website dedicated to take public comment. We had a hotline dedicated to take public comment on the phone. In fact, to tell you the truth, and I think I mentioned this last time, I think it was the last meeting that we held up in Reunion at the Stewart Middle School, we had just a few people show up. I gave a presentation for 1 person. In fact, that was the meeting that Councilor Benson sent robocalls to the entire community trying to turn them out to the meeting. And so I've got to believe that with all the effort that we went to gather community interest and input, there are just a few people here tonight. I've got to believe that that means that most of the community believes that we build safe products. We build safe pipelines. We build safe electric transmission lines. The kind of products that we deliver are safe. We do it in a very safe manner. I want to talk just for a minute, and I'll go through these points, and I won't hit all of them because I don't want us to be here till 1 o'clock again this evening. But I'll tell you that quickly on the Castle Rock incident. You know, that's a situation where, of course, our hearts go out to the family that was injured in that incident. Fortunately, it's not an XL Energy, and it's not in our territory. It was another gas provider. But I can tell you that our gas lines, our gas equipment, goes up to the meter of a house or the meter of a commercial building. And then from that point forward, then it's a private line. We don't know what happens after the private line goes into the home, the business, the school. We talk about safety next to schools. Those schools that we've talked about have gas lines that go into them. I bet this building has a natural gas line inside of it. Privately owned, privately maintained. We don't know how it's maintained. We don't know if it's maintained well. But that's something that we can't control. But of course, we are very concerned about incidents like that and very concerned for the safety of the family. It was mentioned about coal is clean on our website. We are, of course, as a part of the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act, we're not just simply refueling all of our plants from coal to natural gas. Some of them we're continuing to use coal and put the state-of-the-art equipment to clean the emissions from that coal. But I wanted to remind everyone that the reason we're here is because of Environmental Protection Agency regulations. Our entire region has been in a state of non-compliance with their regulations for years. And that was the reason for House Bill 10-1365, which was the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. It's the reason we're here today, to provide cleaner air for our entire region. We're complying with a state statute that was the result of federal regulations, Environmental Protection Agency regulations, so that we can all breathe cleaner air and be healthier. What about training? Why need for training for first responders? Well, first responders ask for this kind of training. They want to be trained, whether it's a safe pipeline or a safe, whatever kind of infrastructure. They want training just in the off chance that something would ever happen. That's what they're there for. That's why we train them. And that's why we provide training. And that's why we provide customized training. In terms of, I heard of the collapse of 104th Avenue. I don't know what that was all about. We do extensive geotechnical testing. We do develop pipelines that are in accordance to the highest standards. And we, and this project is not in 104th to begin with. It's between 103rd and 102nd. Let's see, customized training, I already covered that. No drilling within a 1 mile radius of the arsenal. We're not really drilling, so I don't think that's, we understand the toxic plume issue. We've analyzed that and will continue to do so. Primrose School, let's show that. We have actually a slide showing Primrose School. If Mr. Kramer, or I don't know, if John, do you have that? I don't know. We actually have a slide showing the location of Primrose School. This is Primrose Academy. I misspoke. And you can see the location of the existing 10-inch pipeline, very close to the facility. In fact, it's about 100 feet from the facility. You see our transmission tower delineated with an arrow, as well as the proposed pipeline. We haven't ever had input from Primrose Academy. In fact, you had testimony this evening that Landmark School, that the principal was appalled about this pipeline. I don't see the principal here testifying. If they're appalled, where's the letter? Where's the testimony? Where's the outrage? I don't see it. We build safe pipelines, and in fact, it's very likely that we notified them. We notified literally thousands of people for our outreach meetings, and had very, very few people actually attend. And again, with Primrose School, they received from, I believe it's Shea Homes or Shea Properties, a report indicating that there were pipelines right next to them in this corridor. It did not preclude them or prevent them or deter them from buying this property, and they bought the property knowing that there were pipelines in this corridor. We asked about liability. Of course, to the extent we're responsible, if there ever is an issue, we would be liable, again, to the extent that we're responsible. Natural gas becoming a liquid was a comment. This is natural gas. It's not a liquid. It's never going to actually be a liquid. Building a power plant on E470 is just not an alternative. We have our transmission lines going to the Cherokee plant. There's lots of existing infrastructure. We're refueling one of those generators at the existing plant, and to rebuild a new, and just the siting and an environmental analysis, and it would take many, many years to make that happen, and be extremely costly if we were able to make it happen. And it's just not, it's not an alternative that we're considered. In fact, I can tell you that the Public Utilities Commission considered a lot of different options for us to implement the Clean Air, Clean Jobs Act. This may have been one of them. I'm not sure, but they looked at all of the options, and that was in the development of the Clean Air, Clean Jobs implementation program. You know, Mr. Cerna, I've gotten to know Mr. Cerna. You know, he came out to one or two of those outreach meetings, and in fact, one of the things that he told me at the time was that, you know, Preston, he says, it'd be great if your company would actually get active here in Commerce City. Do something for the city. Don't just take and then leave, and you know, do something for the kids. And I understood that, and I respect that. And I can tell you that we do have mentoring programs. We do have programs where kids can come and get do some internships with Xcel Energy. It's really important to us to do that. And it's important to us to the extent of, now I don't know exactly what all of our employees do here in the city. I've got to believe that having 60 families here, more than 60 families, some of them are active in the community. They probably participate in helping the community. I myself and other employees contribute a large amount to United Way every year. Some of that comes back to the community. I participated in, as did many of our employees, over on Olive Street, building two Habitat for Humanity duplexes earlier this year. A number of Xcel Energy employees talking about environment. In the day of service last year, and my wife and I came out, we dug holes and planted trees and bushes in the Sand Creek Greenway. I mean, we do get active in our communities, in addition to all the tax dollars and all the money that we spend on vendors and suppliers. So we take that very seriously, and I want Mr. Cerna to realize that. Oh, and in fact, I personally have joined the Community Enterprise Board of Directors. I've been a member of that board. I participated in that board for over a year in their events. I'm on the QCI committee here in Commerce City. We are getting active in the community. We think it's important to be active in the community, or we quite frankly wouldn't be here doing this. Let me see if I can just hit a few more points with your indulgence just for another couple of minutes. I appreciated the information from the representative from David Foster's firm, Michael Gates, I believe. representing Cali Management. We understand that they'd rather not see development on 96th. That's an alternative for us. We'd rather not put the pipeline there. So I think that's, in that case, that's probably a win-win solution. Ms. Douglas brought up a number of historical issues and programs and concerns, and I just don't know how to address some of these issues that have happened many years ago. But let me conclude by saying this. Our experts, after really 18 months, at least 18 months of study, have concluded that the safest route is 103rd Avenue. I wouldn't be standing here and requesting your approval of this conditional use permit on 103rd Avenue if it wasn't the safest route. So we sincerely and respectfully ask you to approve our application for 103rd Avenue. But I will tell you that if you choose not to approve the safest route and you consider a second route, 96th Avenue, we would consider the second safest route. And again, we'd like you to approve and request you approve 103rd, but if you do not, we would request your approval of 96th Avenue. Thank you. That concludes my remarks. I'm available for any further questions. Thank you.
Having taken testimony from the audience and a new testimony from the applicant, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this meeting. Hearing is now closed. Well, sure, you could ask questions, but public hearing portion is closed. The testimony portion is closed. You can ask questions during the portion of this meeting where we have comments. Well, Mr. Benson, that's why I gave the council the opportunity, I gave the applicant the opportunity, I gave the residents the opportunity. That's why I closed the public hearing. It's been on for a heck of a long time, like since the last time you wanted to speak. Mr. Gaylor, how to proceed? I've closed the hearing. If he has questions of Mr. Benson, I need you to tell me how that takes place.
If there are questions from the council that have not been covered, the new information that you want to ask, and they're questions, not testimony, then I'm going to recognize that right to do that. But limit it to new information.
Mr. Benson.
Thank you. Mr. Gibson, you've made the statement that this is no risk whatsoever, or that the risk is infinitesimal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the gentleman who lives up in Broomfield stated that it was absolutely safe. Absolutely safe. Do you agree with that?
This pipeline is built to state-of-the-art standards with the latest technology and materials. We believe it's going to be the safest pipeline that we can possibly build.
Okay, so would you be willing to give the city an indemnification based on the principle of absolute liability, not signed by you or any individual, just a corporate indemnification?
Mayor, Council, for the record, Carolyn White, outside Land Use Council for the applicant, 410 17th Street in Denver, 80202. Mayor, if I may address the question about indemnification.
You may.
To be clear, we've had some discussions in the prior meetings about what would be the extent of Excel's liability as the constructor of this pipeline, and that was answered along the lines of if they were found to be responsible, they certainly would be legally responsible, and that's true regardless of what you're talking about. There's the indemnification for the city. If you mean indemnification, you're talking about Excel guaranteeing that if the city were found liable, then Excel would pay for that. That's what an indemnification is, and certainly that's not something that Excel would be considering to do here, because there's no scenario in which the city would be found liable for a pipeline that all they did was grant a permit, unless we perhaps start getting into regulating safety issues and you want to change what the rules are, and we're not doing that right now, I don't think. So, Xcel already is responsible for its own pipeline under the myriad of state, federal, and local laws that exist that regulate this pipeline.
And do those laws use the principle of absolute liability, or do they use the normal tort principles of negligence?
I might just check with inside counsel on that, but I believe it's the typical standard liability, who's responsible pays.
Right. What I'm asking for is the absolute liability criteria. Where we don't have to prove negligence. That's what I'm saying. We don't have to prove negligence.
Sure.
Something about this pipeline causes damage, you're going to be liable for it. And if it's absolutely safe, I don't understand why you're not jumping at the chance, frankly.
Just one second. I need you to state your name and address so that it's for the record. Then you can answer Mr. Benson's question.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. My name is Nadia El-Malik. My address is 1800 Larimer Street, Denver, Colorado, 80202.
I need I'm sorry, could you spell your last name
Sure,
for me?
it's E-L space capital M as in mother, A, L as in Larry, L as in Larry, A, K as in Kate, H as in Henry, El-Malik.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I get that a lot. So a couple of things. Obviously, the laws that are set by our legislature determine the duties of liability and whether something is a strict liability offense or not, or whether the rules of negligence come into play. But I would also note one other thing, and that is we have a franchise agreement with you, and there is a franchise agreement up for renewal. And that agreement does contain certain indemnification provisions. I'm not saying that would, may or may not apply here, but I would note that our franchise agreement does have certain indemnification provisions. But really, at the end of the day, I think what Preston said is accurate. To the extent we are responsible for any liability, we will be held accountable for that. But I did just also want to note the franchise agreement and the indemnification provisions that are in there, along with all of our other franchised cities.
Thank you.
But you understand the difference between the normal negligence, proximate cause, and damages, and what I'm talking about is absolute liability. Kerr McGee and Silkwood or whatever,
Sure, Councilman. I do understand the difference, and what I would say is that those are matters that are set by state law, and so those are what they are. I mean, they have been determined by our legislature.
Well, are you saying that state law would prevent Xcel from executing that type of agreement, imposing absolute liability on their company for damages to the city or to our citizens? Absolute liability standard.
No, what I'm saying is that matter has been addressed as a matter of public policy, and I'm also saying that we do have agreements with the city that cover certain issues of liability, and I would just, I know you have your city attorney here, so I'm not going to speak to that matter further.
Well, and I would ask Mr. Gaylor, is that true? Is anything in our franchise, does anything in there prevent us? I mean, because apparently the franchise doesn't cover this pipeline, or they wouldn't be here. This is a new issue. We're being asked for a conditional use permit, and I would think this ought to be one of the conditions. Go ahead.
The issue is if Xcel Energy doesn't follow any of the safety regulations, if they're negligent in any way, they would be liable for that. There's no provision that would require them to be absolutely liable for an act of God. If we had some earthquake that produced damage to that pipeline through no fault of theirs, there would not be any legal liability, in my opinion, as a result of that damage.
Under the existing documents? Is that what you're saying?
Under any documents.
Where we would have to prove negligence. In other words, absolute liability, as you know, takes the issue of negligence out of it.
We have to prove that Xcel did something wrong.
That's what I want taken out of it. I'm just saying if this pipeline results in damage to somebody.
That's the test that we have with any utility in Commerce City, whether it be Xcel, the telephone company, or anyone else. It's a question of negligence if there's injury.
And you know that if we're stuck with having to prove negligence on Excel, that's going to be a lawsuit that would never end in either your lifetime or my lifetime. What I'm trying to do is to take the issue of negligence out of it and get an absolute liability standard. We've been told that this pipeline is absolutely safe, no risk whatsoever. Any risk is infinitesimal. I don't understand why we're getting this kind of resistance to saying, but if it does occur, you're going to be liable. It can occur according to them. So why won't they agree to that? I just, it doesn't make sense.
I do think
it's hypocritical.
My response is based upon the standard of the industry for anything that occurs that causes damage. As you well know, that standard is a question of negligence. That's the standard. Now, if you have a contract that agrees to something over and above that, that's another matter, but it's not something that is required in this situation.
If I may just also add one item, Councilman, and that is that we also want to encourage people, somebody here mentioned the call before you dig laws. We want to encourage people to be responsible and to follow state law. And so, one of the policy reasons that you don't have absolute liability for something like this is that you are encouraging people to be responsible and to follow state law and to think before they dig and not hold a party accountable for something that they didn't cause or that they didn't do anything wrong, if there is some issue. So again, from a policy standpoint, we want to make sure the community is active and is aware and following state laws like call before you dig.
Well, I don't think the principle of absolute liability excludes proof of proximate cause or damages. What I'm talking about is eliminating the element of negligence. You familiar with Karen Silkwood and Kerr McGee? You familiar with that case?
I think, what we're saying is an absolute liability standard has not been set for these types of activities. So,
But that doesn't mean that we can't do that as a condition to this conditional use permit, does it?
Mayor, if I may, I think maybe the question is being, Excel, if we impose that as a condition of approval, would you agree to it? And the answer is no for the reasons that were articulated, because it's not an appropriate distribution of liability in terms of encouraging people not to be responsible. If I know I won't be held accountable for it, I could go dig wherever I want. It doesn't matter what happens, Excel will pay for it. Then that's exactly the wrong message you want to be sending to the general public. So, the wording of exactly how it turned out to be in the contract that you might be proposing, I guess we'd have to see it. But as a general principle, we believe the public policy that the state has set is the appropriate one for the reasons that have been articulated.
You still have to prove proximate cause. So I think that the analogy that you're raising is not applicable to the situation that I'm proposing.
Well, if I could add this, Councilman Benson, if you have a situation where a third-party contractor digs, causes damage to the pipeline, that third party would be liable because that's negligence.
Right.
Under an absolute indemnification, in that situation, if a third-party contractor caused the damage and we have an absolute indemnification from Excel, then Excel would be responsible and liable for the acts of that third party in that scenario.
No, don't you still have to prove proximate cause even in an absolute liability situation? I believe you do. That answers that whole issue.
Well,
you still have to prove that. All I'm talking about is taking the issue of proof of negligence. I don't care what they do. You can build the safest pipeline in the world according with international, intergalactic standards, whatever you want to impose. But if something happens, you should be liable for it. And everybody here has said there's no risk whatsoever. It's absolutely safe. What's the problem here?
well, this discussion is probably beyond the scope of a conditional use permit application, but from a safety point of view, let me just add this, if I may, Mr. Mayor, is that the indemnification clauses that I write is an absolutely liability issue. And if there's damage, regardless of proximate cause, if it's your activity that causes that damage, you're liable. Now, that's the type of indemnification clause I'm talking about.
Without proof of negligence?
Yes.
All right, that's what I'm asking for.
Okay, is your question answered there, Mr. Benson?
I believe so. I know there was a question raised about when does natural gas become liquid. I think I asked that question a year and a half ago, and the answer was that at atmospheric pressure, it's 70 below zero. Is that right?
Mr. Gibson answered that question already. He said, never does it become a liquid.
That's not true.
Well, I'm just letting you know what I heard.
And the higher the pressure, the higher the temperature, it can become liquid.
Okay.
So we just need to get, those are all the questions that I have.
Great, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Now, what are the council's desires concerning the conditional use permit 97-12? Mr. Benson, is your light lit up for a reason?
Why doesn't my light go off?
That's why I didn't recognize it after
All right.
10 minutes of being on.
I just turned my light off. But
Great, thank you.
Thanks for calling on me.
What are the desires of this council concerning the conditional use permit? I'm open for a motion. Mr. Bullock? Now it went off. Councilwoman Carson?
I don't know if it's appropriate to speak before my motion. I'll just make it short and sweet. There were a lot of things said tonight that I fully agree with. There were also things said that I don't agree with. I'm moving forward with this because I have to take in my own heart and mind what experts tell me, that this is the safest place in our city. I do believe that if we do nothing, the PUC is going to make a decision, and that this is the decision that they will make. So I will move forward with making a motion to approve the natural gas line down the 103rd corridor.
Okay. Thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Mr. Teeter?
Yes, I'm going to second that. I'm very curious to see how council feels about this.
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there discussion? I'm going to clear my board, so go ahead now if you have discussion. Mr. Moreno?
Actually, I have a practical question for Mr. Gaylor. Considering, I'm assuming that the motion is to approve CU 97-12, would council then have to reconsider its denial of facts and findings by the Planning Commission?
The answer to that is no, because in this case, normally you would, because you'd want to make your own findings in a zoning case. But in this case, the way I've drafted this conditional use permit, it specifically provides in the first paragraph that it will be granted pursuant to the requirements of the Land Development Code, and in the Land Development Code there are spelled out criteria for granting or denying it. So if you grant this conditional use permit by the very wording of the conditional use permit that you'd be approving, it provides for findings inherent in the document. So you do not have to reconsider the Planning Commission findings and recommendations.
Thank you.
Mr. Bullock?
Yes, in the last meeting, I was the one that proposed the pipeline going down 96th Avenue. And in 2 weeks, I've driven the route, and I've considered this. And going over the testimony of Xcel Energy and the fact that it's going to be in their corridor where there's no building that's going to be done, knowing the building that we're going to do on 96th Avenue, I have reconsidered and I have decided that I would vote in favor of the 103rd corridor as a pipeline. My only suggestion would be I would like to see it deeper. I know they said that I would like to see it go, instead of 6 feet at 4 feet at the top, I'd like to see it go 8 feet and have it 6 feet at the top, so it would just be a consideration to me, it would be a safer pipeline. That's the only thing, but that's my only consideration on this. But I have figured out that the 96th Avenue is not going to be the safest corridor for this pipeline.
Mr. Benson.
I would move to amend the motion to add a absolute liability provision.
Motion maker?
Oh, you need a second on the amendment.
I need a second on the amendment. Is there a second on the amendment to amend the motion to allow absolute liability?
Second.
I have a second on the motion.
Now you need a vote on that amendment.
Hold on.
Okay.
I have a motion and a second to add absolute liability. I'm going to take this as a voice vote, so be clear so that Laura can pick up everything for the record. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
So if I want to confirm, we have two ayes, if that's correct. Mr. Benson and Mr. Douglas. All the rest are nays. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So,
Now you're back to the original motion.
Gotcha. Next item, or next person to speak, Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone that's provided commentary tonight to our citizens and to the representation from the Excel team. We've certainly heard a lot of information over the last couple of weeks. We've had the information supplied through the public meetings. I know most, if not all of us, have done our own research on the side as well to try and paint as full and clear a picture as we can to help make this decision. There's very little in the world that you can deem a certainty these days. In fact, I can think of almost nothing. There are so many variables at play. And in this case, I think it's easy to look at any of the research that we do, and you can certainly paint worst-case scenarios that say this could be horrible. I live very close to this pipeline, and based on some research that I've done, in a worst-case scenario, my home would be impacted. But when I look at this scenario, and this is something that I have to take into account when I make any decision, I have to look at the person. If it's a personal scenario, if I'm dealing with a person-to-person discussion, I can't take into account the actions of the general public. I have to look at the actions of the individual in question. If I'm looking at doing business with a company, I have to look at that company's track record, not every company in that domain's track record. In this instance, I have to narrow my view to Excel and to the state of Colorado. And if I look at the data for Excel, and I look at the data for the state of Colorado, where we have 45,000 miles of gas lines in this state across transmission and the like. This is based on data that I pulled from the U.S. Department of Transportation data, and also the, sorry, I want to make sure I'm citing where I'm finding this stuff. Colorado Pipeline Association, sorry, I can't find my source for the 45,000 miles of pipeline. But I guess the key here is, per that U.S. DOT data, we've had a handful of incidents and no deaths since 2002 in the entire state. So 45,000 miles, no deaths since 2002. I know that's not a great window of time, but I look at 45,000 miles versus the roughly 30 miles that we're talking about in Commerce City. I look at the assurances that Excel has put forward, and again, I know that there are no certainties, but the data, even in those simple terms, says that the odds of an issue are very, very small. And I'm not going to sit here and do math in public like Mr. Benson. That's not my forte. But I think I think the decision, even if it's emotionally and personally difficult, looking at the data, as I have to as a council member, makes it difficult to say that this shouldn't go down the 104th corridor. I think the risks down 96th, due to the amount of development activity that would be happening, due to the impact to land that's already planned and platted for certain uses that would have to accommodate now a pipeline of this size, the safety of the 102nd Avenue, 104th Avenue, whatever we want to call it, corridor, to me says that corridor has the least risk in terms of third-party disruption, which we hear is the highest cause for issue. So as much as I may not like it, the experts and the data that I have available to me indicate that this is the right decision, short of not having a gas pipeline, or short of not having coal trains, or short of, having solar sufficient tomorrow to do everything that I would like. And I would certainly love that, but that's not the reality that we are here to deal with. So, thank you.
Mr. Douglas.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on that. I don't think the 104th, 103rd, to me makes. I don't care how much data or how safe it is. This oil, this 24-inch pipeline is suited for the Cherokee pipeline. It's not suited for the northern area. Not for a much later date. That wasn't the intent for this pipeline. We already had the oil and gas impact our city, and we did well with that. We took a while to unsif and figure out what the best situation was, and it all comes down to the health and welfare of our citizens. And I did not hear that at all from your presentation. You say how safe it is, but you didn't say anything about the health and welfare of our citizens here. And I think that's very important. That comes through with a company as big as Excel, and that's why I serve. I serve to protect the citizens, and I care about their health and welfare. And to me, 96, based on the build out and all, I need this service line there much more than 103rd. So I will not be voting for that. Thanks.
Mr. Moreno.
Just briefly, I think I made my position relatively clear last time we met, that I think with the information that was provided and in my best judgment and interpreting the information that was provided, I do think the 103rd Avenue is the safest route. I brought this up last time we discussed this, but that public service right-of-way, that public service buffer, was so definite that it was written into our comprehensive plan. It's something that we rarely change, and that we anticipated that that would always be a utility corridor, and so with the information that Excel has provided about third-party disruption and that being the greatest risk, logic has to lead me to believe that the safest place to put it is where the least risk of third-party damage is going to occur. As Councilman McEldowney said, and I want to echo, it's a very personally difficult decision to make. Councilman McEldowney lives near where the proposed alignment is. My sister and her family, my nephews and nieces, live there as well. And is there a calculated risk in everything that you do in this world? Absolutely. But I think the experts have concluded that this is the safest route that we could possibly take. So I will be supporting the motion.
Councilwoman Carson.
Mr. Moreno covered most of what I wanted to say. It is a difficult decision for everybody sitting up here. And I guess that I feel that if there is some kind of terrible incident with this pipeline, I don't care where it is. every person is important in whatever city you live in. That doesn't matter to me. I do believe that the pipeline is something that, like I said, is coming to our city no matter what. And it doesn't matter to me if it runs through Thornton or it runs through Brighton. I believe that this is something that nobody wants in their backyard. But it's going to go somewhere. I have to listen to the testimony of the experts to say this is the safest place. My husband is a firefighter along with Mr. Teeter. Both of them will tell you that they do agree with the presentation Mr. Gibson gave, that it is third-party incident where they have all of the calls that they run on. I very much appreciate that you will come in and do first responder training. I would like to see anything that's different that comes to our city offer that, because our first responders need to understand what that is, and who better to teach them than who is putting that in. If we have a new automobile put out there in the market and the jaws of life don't work on it anymore and a firefighter needs to know a new way to get you out, I would hope that automobile industry would train you there. So thank you for that. Ms. McIntyre, I completely agree with you. I truly wish that this nation would go after wind and solar. But what I just saw on the news is Vestas laid off 70 to 80 employees. So I'm not sure that is fully supported to the degree that I would like to see it. And I do agree with you, coal is not clean. I watched the coal trains run up and down. Everybody knows where I live by the tracks there. The coal that is moved through this nation, I do believe, does a lot of damage. And so as a counselor, you have to weigh every single detail there is. Mr. McEldowney, as it's been pointed out, does live in the area. I live close, not as close, but these decisions aren't easy to make, but it is my job to look and to believe testimony of experts and then come out with what I think is the best decision for this city. And I am a believer that the Utilities Commission would rule, and they'd rule in favor of the 104th corridor. So, but I just wanted to give a little explanation of why I am supporting this, and hopefully people understand my position now.
Thank you. Yes, there's only me left that wants to speak. This is probably, since I've been back, the toughest decision I've had to make. Number one, I recognize the fact that it's our community is being impacted, just like the gentleman mentioned. Are we willing to push that impact off onto another community? No, but we are the community that is being impacted, and I know that the way this works, that the tax revenues that are generated are shared regionally, and I do think if we're going to take the impact, there should be some form of benefit to our residents. I do believe and would like this pipeline to have a little more cover than 4 feet to ensure some safety. I do also believe that if this council decides to not allow this pipeline, that the PUC will allow this pipeline. The only difference is we have at least 20 conditions that are placed as part of this conditional use permit that would not be considered wholly if the PUC was to allow this pipeline, and I believe they will. I happen to be the one council person, or the mayor at the time, that went to the county for a hearing on transmission lines that were coming in, overhead transmission lines that would affect the same neighborhood from United Power. And I spoke in opposition to those power lines, forced that to go to the PUC, and the end result is we're going to get some power lines. I do think that those things need to be undergrounded. Also have a background in underground utilities. I do believe that the safest place for it to be is in a corridor where there is less risk for third-party damage. However, I have a community that I also have responsibilities to, and I would like to make a motion to amend the motion that's on the floor to allow 2 feet more of cover going through that corridor because of our residences. Mr. Bullock.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to amend the motion to allow an additional 2 feet of cover on the pipeline if it's approved?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir?
That would be an additional condition,
That's correct.
and we need to hear from the applicant as to whether or not the applicant has any problem with that additional condition.
Mr. Attorney, here is one of my concerns, and this is why I'm bringing it up. If I can't get a little additional cover to help, let my community know that I'm trying to make it as safe as possible, then I'm going to have a hard time voting for the motion that's on the floor. So my amendment is crucial to the decision I'm about to make. Mr. Gibson, would you like to speak to my amendment to the motion before I take the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did canvass our team, and so essentially you're saying 2 feet of additional cover, bury the pipeline 2 feet deeper. Is that what I'm hearing?
6 feet of cover over the top of the pipeline.
6 feet of cover. While we do not believe that is the optimal situation, our team has come to the conclusion that we'll accept that. So thank you for that motion, and we appreciate the motion maker and second and your support. Thank you.
So I have
All of the whole pipeline,
No,
only certain areas.
Yeah, I guess that's the key. I'm assuming this is just down our corridor there, the 103rd Avenue corridor.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've got a motion and a second on the floor. I've got the amendment to the motion and a second. Is there discussion? And because I have so many people lit up over here, discussion particularly on the amendment. Mr. McElroy.
This is just the amendment now,
Just
right?
for the amendment, correct.
And as I understand the amendment, it's on the 103rd Avenue corridor, not the rest of the line.
My primary concerns here are the schools, where, because of the proximity, I just want to ensure our public that we are going above and beyond to try to make this more safe. Mr. McEldowney, your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question I would assume would need to be asked or answered by Mr. Gibson and the staff from Excel. I want to make sure this isn't a false choice, right? 6 feet seems better, right? 6 is more than 4. And I don't want to say yes to 6 feet under the guise that that's the better decision for my community if what I'm hearing from Excel and what I've heard multiple times in this testimony, both in this evening's testimony and the prior testimony, is that 4 feet is optimal for 2 reasons, as I hear it. And this is where sort of we not being gas line experts comes into play. I hear 4 feet is good because that's the depth at which you still are able to get an emission of the smell, which means that if something's smelly, there's a problem, right? We all get that. So if I can smell it, I know there's a problem, even if some alarm on the pipeline hasn't sounded. Therefore, I can call Excel. Now, if I go deeper than that, that must mean that there's less of a chance that in the exact same scenario, with the exact same amount of gas escaping from the pipe, I'm not going to be able to smell it, and I'm not going to be able to call Excel. That, to me, isn't safety. What I hear from Excel is that deeper you go is not better in terms of that level of safety. And so if we are going to talk about going deeper because it's safer, then the last place that would make sense is in the 103rd Avenue corridor, where it's it's essentially a no-go zone, right? It may as well be the hinterland between the former, or between North and South Korea, right? People don't go there other than to maybe walk, right? If you're going to go out there to dig, it's because you're Excel. So if I'm going to go deeper based on that logic, it would mean that I would go deeper where I'm going through neighborhoods where there isn't a protected utility corridor. So I want a definitive answer from Excel in terms of the benefits of 4 foot versus 6 foot, or the risk of 6 foot versus 4 foot, because I want to make a fact-based decision.
No problem. Mr. Gibson, please.
Councilor McEldowney, you're exactly on the right track. I can tell you that it's not our decision to bury a pipe deeper because it, quite frankly, is not as safe. It's a matter of detecting gas if gas ever leaked. And it's easier to detect gas the closer the pipe is to the surface. And also, we have to balance the additional depth and ease of maintenance and emergency access for our personnel that may need to be repairing a pipeline. The deeper the pipeline, the more difficult it is to repair, and the more dangerous it is for our personnel. The federal standard is 3 feet. We're going 4 feet. The standard is 3, so we're adding an additional foot. We believe that's optimal. We really don't want to agree to an additional couple of feet. I mean, if that's the decision of the council, I want to be sure that it's on the record that it is the council's decision. It's not our decision to go that way. And we quite frankly would rather not. We don't believe it's as safe as what we're proposing. That's why we're proposing 4 feet. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there more discussion on the amendment? Councilwoman Carson.
I had the same questions as Mr. McEldowney, but along those lines, somewhere tonight or in one of these presentations, the depth of the pipe was spoke about, and that if there was a leak, if it was deeper, that could take longer, it would mitigate into the soil longer. Is that, did I hear that correct? So if it is deeper, it takes longer to detect it, so there has been more of a leakage, which sets you up for potentially a greater disaster?
Thank you. That is correct. It would take longer for that natural gas to get to the surface to be detected. And in addition, depending on the porosity of the soil, it could migrate. It could migrate under the ground. The deeper that we go, the less safe it typically is. So it is a concern to us.
And on that soil, one more question, and I don't know how far to the south the soil changes or whatever. I am on a very sandy soil. The water just runs right through. So if you have that leak and it runs through, it's going to settle in the bottom. How long does it take before your bells and whistles detect that, even if the odor does not rise above?
Well, natural gas does rise. It doesn't sink.
It would always rise no matter what the soil is?
It always rises to the surface.
Okay.
And we would detect that on any of our leak surveys.
And so if you had to, I don't know if you could, but is there, do you have a time frame for every foot that you go down further? Because the standard is 3 foot, we're already going 4. If we go 6, is there any way of knowing this takes an extra day before you smell it?
I think it depends on a lot of environmental conditions, and it would just depend on the particular situation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have some additional questions concerning this berry depth. I feel like there's some contradicting information that I need to have cleared up. If the federal regulation's 3 feet, and the closer it is to the surface, the easier it is to detect, why are you going 4?
I'm going to have to ask one of our engineers to respond to that question.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I can do that adequately.
Okay.
Sarah Robinson, Excel Energy, 1123 West 3rd Avenue, Denver, Colorado, 80223. Again, it still gets to third-party damage. You still want to have some cover over the line. If we have an exposed line, people are, drive on it or walk on it with their bicycles. I mean, you still want that protection. You still need the soil protection over the line for stress calculus, for stresses and other things around those lines. I mean, we do have pipelines that are exposed on bridges. We do have pipelines that are exposed over the Rocky Mountains. But our preference is to have them buried and not just exposed. Sometimes when they're exposed, they turn into target practice for people.
Thank you. And I also wanted to ask, while I have you up there, is your leak detection based, from my understanding, on the actually extra valves that you're putting in, on pressure loss rather than smell?
The leak detection that we have on it is actually gas. It's not smell or anything like that. We actually have helicopters that fly over our pipelines twice a year at a bare minimum, that they're actually looking for natural gas.
Okay. And in the impervious soil that Commerce City has, which is much better than most metro areas because it's impervious, a lot of sand, very little clay, understanding enough about soils, 4 feet in clay is 8 feet in our soils. I mean, for being impervious and allowing that gas to escape. And with the questions or the answer to my question about why you're going a foot deeper, that's exactly why I asked for 2 foot more. I know that if there was to be something that to happen, the 2 feet deeper is going to reduce how far out from being within the ground that much further from surface type damage. And that's just my opinion. I'm not an engineer. That's why I asked for what I did. Thank you for your answers. Mr. Bullock, you had a comment?
Yes, the question that you just phrased is the question I was going to ask, because in their presentation on leak detection and pressure drops, that was one of the things that they discussed, that they would immediately see a pressure drop and be able to maybe not zero in on it, but centrally zero in on where the pressure is dropping at. So I don't think that extra 2 feet is going to make a difference in Commerce City due to the fact of the soil and due to the fact that if you have state-of-the-art leak detection, you will find this out as soon as you have a leak, that the pressure drop will be immediately on your sensor boards.
Okay, is there anyone else on the amendment before I move forward? Mr. Moreno.
Just for clarity's sake, is the amendment designed to only underground the pipeline in the 103rd corridor?
That's correct.
I mean, what concerns me is that if safety is the primary concern, which the amendment is proposed to be, then why wouldn't we underground it 2 feet for the entire route?
Are you recommending a new amendment?
No.
All right, just checking. I stated earlier my amendment was based on the fact that this is the 3 schools that it runs along or in that corridor. Any other discussions on my amendment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Do you have that, Laura? No. Okay. If you voted no, or if you voted for the amendment, raise your hand. Okay. 3 for the amendment. The amendment fails. We're back to the original motion. That was on my amendment. To underground, to add an extra 2 feet of cover. Okay? We're back to the original motion and second. I have 3 lights lit up here. Mr. Bullock?
No, I have nothing further. I didn't
Okay.
turn it
Now
on.
I have no lights. Is there no further discussion concerning the motion and the second on the floor? If not, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Let the record show the motion is carried. Conditional use permit is granted, 6-3. We will take a 10-minute recess and come back.
personally accounted for 576 yards. If we beat LSU,
I almost missed my seat.
If I get everybody back up to the dais, we can get started. The next item on the agenda is a resolution 2012-80. I'm in the right location, correct? That is the next item.
No, the public hearing on the budget.
It's a public hearing on the 2013 budget. It was listed on the agenda under resolutions, but it is a public hearing.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, because that's where I'm at, is under resolutions. All right, we have a public hearing on the 2013 budget. I will open the hearing at this time. City staff, please give an overview.
Good evening.
This says there's not going to be a staff presentation, but
we have a couple of slides, just kind of a
that's what
recap
I
to
wanted.
kind of go over everything we've done for the past
Perfect.
few meetings.
Thank you.
So to kind of just recap the general fund, our revenues for 2013 are projected at $48.4 million, and then the breakdown of the general fund revenues for the administration division and departments, it's a little over $3.8 million. Human resources, $874,000. Finance, which includes all of the city benefits for the entire city organization, is around almost $2 million. Community development is 3.1. Public safety around $14 million. Public works 5.4. Refuse collection is around 1.994, and Parks and Recreation is around almost $5 million. In addition to those expenditures, we have some transfers set for 2013. The Housing Authority, a transfer of $60,000. Elected officials retirement, $36,960. Transfers to our sales tax bond issues around $3.2 million, and then we have general fund transfer to the CIP fund around $666,000 for a total of expenditures of $50,831,233. In addition to the revenues, we also have transfers to fill that gap based on your decision was general fund balance around 2.3 and equipment reserve fund balance for Parks and Recreation around $22,000. I also wanted to recap kind of the general fund reserves. That is typically a discussion that comes up every now and then. So in general fund, currently in 2012, the fund balance is $7.8 million. We are using a little over $2.3 million for the 2013, so our estimated balance at the end of 2013 would be $5.4 million. Within the general fund, we do also have some contingency funds in both general fund and CIP. The other reserves we have is our operating reserves, which in 2012 are at $4.6 million. Those are for shortfalls. Our estimate is to slightly increase that by the end of 2013 to $4.7. Our safeguard reserves, which is used for emergencies, is currently at $6.6. We estimate by the end of 2013 it to be at $6.7 million. We also have the Tabor Reserve at 1.4 for 2012 with a 2013 of around 1.4. So currently our total reserves is around $12.6 million, and we estimate by 2013 it'll be at 12.8. So what we're kind of suggesting right now is to just open the public hearing and continue it till November 5th, which at that time have you close the public hearing, act on the budget, and then certify the mill levy.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Okay. I should ask him that.
Yep, you should. Mr. Bullock, you have a question for the staff?
Yes, sir. The mill levy is going to remain the same, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
3.28?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
Mr. Douglas?
All right, isn't a November 5th meeting been canceled because of Veterans Day?
Is what?
It says on the 5th. Is Veterans Day on the 5th or 12th?
12th.
Because it shows canceled on our calendar. Showed it on as the 5th.
What are you asking, if we're going to be out of town?
No. I mean, if the meeting's canceled, then because November 5th is the close of the hearing.
Right. No, on the city council meeting of November 5th, we will close the public hearing and act on the budget.
Okay, because I was just confused because it shows on here that.
No. We will, the way the budget works, we have to open the public hearing and then allow a certain amount of time to go by and allow that testimony to take place during those meetings, and then we can close that public hearing, November 5th, and then we will take action on the budget. We're not taking action tonight. We're only opening the hearing and taking testimony.
He was saying it's Veterans Day, November 5th, and we said
Veterans
no,
Day.
12th. It's the 12th.
Okay.
It shows on the 5th that we got from the staff. It shows that meeting was canceled.
They canceled the wrong day because it shows on my calendar the 12th is being canceled.
Okay, so the 5th, I need to ask the staff, is the 5th the actual day for council? Or is it the 12th?
My understanding, Veterans Day is being observed November 12th, so there is no council meeting that day. City Hall is closed.
So we will be closing, this will be on the agenda for the 5th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Douglas?
Yeah, because now, it actually showed both. It actually showed the 5th being canceled and the 12th.
Okay, so the 5th is the council meeting, the 12th will be Veterans Day observed.
Correct.
Correct? As long as we're clear. Mr. McEldowney.
On the point of the 5th, I think staff may have canceled the 5th Outlook invite in error. So that may have been part of the problem, is that we have no Outlook calendar item, at least I don't, for the 5th or the 12th. The 12th is the correct cancellation due to Veterans Day.
We'll certainly check on that first thing tomorrow. Our calendars and Outlook still show a council meeting on November 5th.
Do you show it?
I show a council meeting on November 5th, but no council meeting on November 12th on my calendar.
We'll let staff sort out. I didn't see one on my calendar. Thank you.
My calendar also shows the council meeting on the 5th. Not canceled. Okay. Any other comments to staff at this time from the council? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify based on, or to give testimony on the budget at this time? Seeing none? Do I need a motion and a second to continue this? Okay, I'll ask the council.
Yes.
Mr. McEldowney?
So moved.
Mr. Moreno?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to continue this hearing until the 5th of November, 6:30. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2012-78. Does council have any questions for staff regarding this resolution? Mr. Moreno?
Sorry, that was from
Mr. Bullock?
Where is this salt dome located?
Mr. Hoover?
Excuse me, my name is Sam Hoover. I'm the Street and Traffic Operations Manager. The salt dome that we're terminating the agreement on is actually located at 8080 Dahlia Street, so just north of I-76 on Dahlia on that east side.
That's a shared piece with the county?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. Prior to this dome, the city and the county had gone in together and built a salt dome over on Colorado Boulevard, north of 72nd. And then sometime around 2000, the sheriff department moved and they needed that land where that dome was. So the county already owned this property. They went up and built a dome. Up there, we chipped in $45,000 for the maintenance and construction. And quite honestly, ever since they moved it from the 72nd and Colorado location, it really didn't function well for the city. Just the location, it's in a bad location for us to get to. We don't have any routes going through there. A lot of changes have occurred since 2001 when this agreement was put in place. Back then, the county and the city were both using different materials, so we were just storing relatively small amounts of salt in there. Now we've gone from that 20% salt mixture to the ice slicer that we currently use, and we need a much bigger facility. So this hasn't been a benefit for the city for quite a few years.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any other questions to the staff on Resolution 2012-78? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hoover. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council regarding this resolution? Seeing no one, what are the council's desires? Mr. Bullock?
Move to approve Resolution 2012-78.
Mr. Moreno?
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 2012-78. All those in favor?
Title, Mr. Mayor.
Title, please.
Title reads, Resolution Approving Agreement to Terminate Intergovernmental Agreement Regarding Construction, Use, and Maintenance of Salt Storage Dome.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next item, Resolution 2012-79. Does any council members have any questions for staff regarding this resolution? Mr. McEldowney?
No, I was prepared to make a motion.
Okay, Mr. Bullock?
Prepared to make a motion.
Mr. McEldowney, make your motion.
Move to approve Resolution 2012-79.
Thank you. Mr. Bullock?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Mr. Benson?
Well, as I understand it, all this does, it just takes this out of a one-year deal to an annually renewable deal, automatic. That's what we're voting on.
Mr. Hoover, would you mind giving just a brief explanation?
I think I approached this wrong last time, so I'm going to try to correct my deficiencies. I'm Sam Hoover. I'm the Street and Traffic Operations Manager. Mr. Benson, in regards to your question, you're correct. That's all this does. Instead of us having to sign it every year, unless there's a reason for it to be changed by either party, it's an automatic renewal every year. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Hoover while we've got him up here? Seeing no one, thank you.
Thanks.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Attorney, you want to read the title, please?
Title reads, Resolution Approving First Amendment to Intergovernmental Agreement between the City of Commerce City and the County of Adams regarding the maintenance of public rights-of-way.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is administrative council business. Mr. Bullock.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor and Council, on Friday, The CML Policy Committee is meeting to look over proposed legislation and proposed policy for the upcoming session. And two of the items that we will be looking at is tighter regulations on metal recyclers. And I want to know what is council's opinion, because I was thinking that because of some of the issues we've had with recycled metal, stolen metal in the city, that it wouldn't be a bad idea to tighten the regulations to make sure that the recyclers are getting ID and information from the people that are bringing forth the metal. And the second one is raising municipal court fees. And as I've been, I think we're opposed to that because it's just not a healthy climate right now to be raising fees. But what is council's, this is just going to be my opinion to the policy committee. Does council have any objection to either one of those?
Mr. Benson?
I had something else that I have in my life.
Something else?
Yeah.
You don't want to speak on the recycled metals or the fees for the courts? No. Any other council members have any discussion items on the recycled metal situation, or for more information as they recycle, or on the courts imposing additional increases to the fines? Mr. Douglas?
Yes, Renee, any information that you can provide, I would greatly appreciate that, just on what you're talking about. Or if I can go to a certain website or so and look it up.
Well, I was sent this from Kevin Balmer, and he's sending us exactly what a couple of the items that were being brought forth from different policy members. And those are the two items that I've gotten so far, that there's a policy member that wants to increase court fees, which I'm asking for opinion, yes or no from council, but I'm going to go with strictly a no. And the scrap metal, due to the fact that there's so much theft of precious metals, coppers and everything around there, and it's a fencing item, they want to have stricter regulations so people just can't steal and go in and get paid for it without having any due course or ID. It's just like a pawn shop.
Right, I agree with that.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Moreno? Something different? Okay. Did you get what you needed, Mr.
I've got what I needed. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Benson?
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up again, this is something that I've been talking about for about 4 years, 2 different councils ago, and that is the maintenance of foreclosed or abandoned properties. I know we had an executive session to cover this, or maybe it was a study session to cover it 2 or 3 months ago. And I thought that we had directed the staff to come up with some type of an ordinance that would establish this kind of a program. But in talking to the staff understood it to be that they were just to come up with a plan to register foreclosed properties. And I haven't seen that plan either, but I would just like, could we have another study session or another executive session to cover that issue, because we can say, okay, we're going to forget about this, or let's go forward with it, because I'm just getting tired of having to raise it about every 4 or 5 months. It's the same old thing, the same old thing. It's not that difficult. It's an easy process to put into effect. We just either need to say, okay, we're going to do this or we're not. However the council votes is fine with me.
Okay. I'm going to go to Mr. Hayes or Mr. McBroom. Mr. Hayes is probably the one to answer that question. Mr. McBroom, I'm trying to get you off the hot seat there.
Well, let me start, and I'll ask Mr. Hayes to jump in and add any additional details. My understanding of the general tenor of the discussion when this was presented at study session was for staff to pursue some type of ordinance to require the registration of foreclosed properties. There was quite a bit of discussion that night about The other alternative of the city actually doing maintenance on foreclosed properties, I don't recall hearing consensus from council at that study session that we should proceed in that direction. I actually suggested to Mr. Benson. Mr. Benson had a different recollection of that study session discussion, and so it may be appropriate to put it on an upcoming study session and clarify. Perhaps staff misunderstood the general result of that discussion that evening. That's entirely possible. But my recollection was that we were to pursue an ordinance to register foreclosed properties.
No, of course, as we have discussed, if I still got the floor, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you do.
Okay. That was not my understanding, but anyway, there was just a misunderstanding, and I don't believe anybody ever suggested that the city itself use city employees to do this maintenance. It was always the city can hire that to be done through the various HOAs and get paid 18% annual return on the money that we expend on that. I don't know where else we can earn 18% on our money, but if anybody's, and there isn't any other place for us to do that. But I just like to bring this to a head like I thought we had 2-3 months ago and either decide we're going to go ahead with it. I think that maybe myself and Mr. Gaylor can get together and draft an ordinance that will accomplish this. I don't think it's going to be that difficult, but let's either get on with it or just say we're not interested in doing this, and if property goes into foreclosure or decay, we're not going to do anything about it.
My recommendation would be that we go ahead and have another study session to discuss and get the information that Mr. Hayes has done the research on to bring back to this council so that we can have a better understanding before we look at an ordinance. I think it should be done in a study session manner. Do you need council to vote to give direction to that?
I'm not hearing any objection, so we will look to schedule that on the study session calendar as soon as possible. I think Mr. Hayes had some additional points to add.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We have been trying to set up a meeting with the City of Aurora for, frankly, 2 months since we had the last study session, and it's just been virtually impossible to get together with the right people over there. A little bit of our schedule, a little bit of their schedule. But they're really the only community that we found in the metro area that's doing vacant property registration and kind of foreclosure fix-ups, if you will. So we do have that meeting scheduled. Unfortunately, it's not until November 14th. So we're continuing our research on that in advance of that meeting. The other thing I wanted to point out at the conference I went to last week, one of the vendors down there was actually a company out of Florida that does this for communities. It was a former code enforcement officer and some contractors that started a company, and they actually go around to various cities around the country and set up these kinds of programs. So it's another angle we're investigating, but just want to let you know we are working on it. We've not forgotten about it, just now a matter of taking some time to get the research done.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hayes. That sounds good. I'll look forward to the study session.
Looks like you're making some headway. Is that all you had, Mr. Benson?
I'm sorry?
Is that all you had for administrative business?
It's not all I have, but it's all I'm going to talk about tonight.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Mr. Moreno.
Yeah, I was going to take care of some of the items we have on the agenda, if that's okay.
I still have some more folks, and I don't know if
I
there's
mean,
more.
like the under admin business.
Under admin business. Oh, yeah, that's fine if you're ready to do some of that.
Okay. So I move to allow the mayor to sign a letter from the council in support of the city clerk's nomination application to the International Institute of Municipal Clerks Board of Directors.
And since I have people on my board to go, I'll take a second. Okay, I have a motion and a second to allow me to sign a letter of support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Mr. Moreno, want to continue?
Please, thank you. I move to begin the meeting of November 5th, 2012 at 5:30 p.m.
Okay. Second. I have a motion and a second to start the meeting on November 5th at 5:30 p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. One more to take care of, Mr. Moreno?
If he's willing, I move to reappoint Councilman McEldowney to the 27J Capital Facility Fee Foundation.
Okay.
I'll second that.
I have a second by Mr. Bullock. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Hopefully you're okay with that, because it's done. I didn't want to ask until it was done. Anything further, Mr. Moreno?
That's it.
Okay, Mr. Douglas.
Yes, we have a few things here, but I will forward those over to you, Brian, with pictures on some of the things that I've identified. So I'll be doing that. That way it's concrete and be no misunderstanding. So thank you.
Okay, anything further? That's good? Just between you and Brian? It's fine? Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you. I had two items. I think many of us have driven the 120th Avenue corridor where it tees into Buckley. And looking at it now on Google Maps, and you can clearly see there's a pattern of drivers starting to cut through the empty lot at the corner to make the northbound turn onto Buckley Road. If you ever sit there in any deep traffic, you'll see people cutting through, and the more prominent that cut through the weeds starts to look, the more people seem to take advantage of it. Shy of putting up a fence, which exists a little further to the east of that exact spot, I wonder if our pavement management budget could accommodate actually putting a formal right turn lane in there, because it seems like a good split of the traffic at that intersection is trying to bend to the north versus go straight, and it may help with flow there. The other challenge at that same intersection, and I know this both firsthand and in watching others, we have a really good emergency lane essentially along the entire 120th Avenue corridor, and we do along Tower Road, and so cyclists are, it's a favorite route because we lack hard surface trails for cycling. That has become a really, really dangerous spot because there's almost zero in the way of shoulder on the would be the eastbound lane of 120th. So in periods of higher traffic, the cyclists moving east or west in that eastbound lane have zero margin for error, and so they're either riding on the stripe or riding in the lane, whereas through the rest of that corridor, it's wide open. So it would be awesome if we could put a little bit of asphalt just to create a safer corridor consistent with the rest of that roadway, and then also again the turn to the north. I don't know if anybody else has comments on that intersection, but
I think it's appropriate to have staff look at it.
great. So yeah, I'll let you guys look at that. And then I did have one more, Mr. Mayor. I
Sure.
will be quick. We seem to have a very regular conversation about parks and the desire to invest in parks. It's something that's near and dear to all of us. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the discussions about parks seem to come up when our staff aren't prepared to talk about parks. And we're asking for staff to quote us on what it would cost to build a park or what it would cost to maintain a park. When I leave my neighborhood, seems like most times I dead end at at Landmark, which is right at the Second Creek open space. And as you're sitting at that stop sign, there's a big sign that says future park site. And I don't know where or why it hit me, but sitting at that stop sign the other day on my way to pick up my daughter, ran through my head that we had a discussion at a recent meeting, and I thought it would be great if we could, on all of those park signs, those future park signs, have two pieces of information: projected cost in terms of capital to establish that park, and projected annual O&M in terms of maintaining that park. Not only put it on the sign, but have a corresponding list of future park sites on our city website, so that as a citizen has a question, as we have a question, as staff has a question, the information is there and it's maintained. We certainly have a lot of this in the Prairie Ways Action Plan or otherwise, but we don't have it in any readily available place. And in light of what's happening with QCI and the public meetings which begin tomorrow night, it would be awesome to have that kind of information out there, because then if somebody approaches us about why don't we build that park, we can now have a very different discussion. We can have a discussion where they come to us and say, why is that park going to cost $7 million to build? Or why is that park going to cost $1 million a year for maintenance? And we can say, oh, well, not only that, but we have 39 other future parks that we want to build too. And it can become a discussion. And so I guess my comment for council and hopefully with their support for staff is to look at what it would take to put together a program where we create a list of those park sites, determine at what interval it would make sense to update or maintain those estimates so that it's good and worthwhile information, and then see if it might be viable to put some sort of a sign. We have a sign shop in Public Works to see if we could put some sort of a sign on those, because many of them are in places that people go by, whether it's the park in Second Creek or the Second Creek open space, or many of these people are moving by, and it would be a great opportunity to have that discussion. On a related note, it would be great to have a similar list of our future transportation corridors, because we don't have that on the city website to my knowledge either, or at least that I've found. I know we have in our budget books annually, we have a portion of our overall list of capital projects, and those are handy for us, but that's not information that's easily obtained by the community, and it would be great again to have some number of our future transportation corridors accounted for in a similar manner for folks to get to. So, I don't know if there are any comments or thoughts on that.
Well, I have a comment. I would think that we could utilize our, what do they call it, the neighborhood news, to address both of those issues at some time, and then to also have the information available on the website.
Yeah, I love the idea of putting the news.
Okay. Anyone else? Steve?
Maybe we could have that sometime next month at a study session about the parks and the costs and everything.
Brian?
Actually scheduled for next week's study session is the broader discussion of our capital improvement project list, and parks are certainly a part of that.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing no one else, Mr. McBroom, you have any reports to give this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A fairly short update tonight that we sent out prior to this evening's meeting. The first item is a response to a request from Mr. Douglas regarding school resource officers at Prairie View Middle School and Prairie View High School. The police department's provided an update through a cooperative effort with the Brighton Police Department. We have made arrangements to have a school resource officer at the high school from January 1st until the end of the school year in 2013. And then at the end of the year, both departments are going to evaluate the effectiveness of having a resource officer there full-time. Right now, we don't have the staff to have a resource officer full-time at the middle school. So that's one update. Another update was regarding council members who'd seen horse activity along the Arsenal property, along the Rocky Mountain Arsenal National Wildlife Refuge. So we provided an update there. There are currently no restrictions prohibiting horses from using the perimeter trail. However, we have been working with a memorandum of understanding with the refuge staff, and we believe that the Fish and Wildlife Service would like to prohibit horse activity on that trail. So that's not in place yet, but we do expect that. Related, City Council had also talked at that same meeting about horseback riding along roadways. I think the concern had been horses along Highway 2. The Police Department Traffic Unit did identify that it is unlawful to ride along roadways. However, two laws specifically addressing animals on roadways exist in the Model Traffic Code. We've provided the details of those in the City Council update tonight. And then finally, at a previous study session, the question of the numbers of developed lots in the community that have yet to be built upon was raised. And so we've included some research put together by the Community Development Department that estimates the number of developed lots, which is to say lots that have been developed to the point where there's a paved street in front, there's water and sewer and other utilities available, but yet the lot itself is still vacant. Based on our current rate of single-family home construction in the community, there looks to be several years' worth of inventory of vacant developed lots available within the community before we would likely see new subdivision development. I know that was part of the discussion regarding Mr. Clace's project. That doesn't necessarily mean that Mr. Clace's project isn't marketable. That starts to get into the value of the lots, price points, location of those lots. But in terms of existing subdivisions, we do have quite a few developed lots that are still vacant. So those were the updates in response to requests for information from council at prior meetings. So as always, we're happy to answer any questions about the information if council members have them.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney.
Nothing to report.
Okay. My report is fairly brief. I met with our ED folks and a prospective ED prospect. Then I was out of town Wednesday through Saturday, and I'd like to thank the Mayor Pro Tem for taking over. I took my wife to go see our new grandbaby, and I know Linda Watts is watching at home, and she had left me a message. It was a baby boy, and his name is Calvin Alexander Ford. Many of us attended the A-list dinner, and some of the council the same evening went to the Youth Commission meeting. Mr. Bullock participated with a phone interview to a science magazine last week with me and some staff. Many of the council attended the Hope event on Friday evening, and some council attended the homecoming parade for Adams City High School on Saturday. If there's a council person that would like to add anything to my report, they're more than welcome to. Councilwoman Carson?
I just wanted to remind everybody this Friday, October 19th at 6 p.m. at Adams City High School, Cultural Council will present History Hunter. Tickets are $12 at the door with $2 off with a donation to the food bank. So it'll be a great night. Please come out. I went last year. Quite a few of us saw it last year. It's a very enjoyable evening. So like I said, 6 p.m. at Adams City High on October 19th.
Thank you. Mr. Douglas?
Yes. I was going to say last Thursday at the E470 meeting, Reba Jordan was presented with the Driving Force Award from E470, which they give out every 2 years, and it's a really high honor to receive that award. On Friday, I attended at Front Range Airport, the spaceport. They were talking about different types of rocket fuel vehicles that they're going to get. The license should be approved next year. She'll be able to do a space flight, have it launch from Florida and have it land here and vice versa. Arizona was also compete for that, but Colorado is ended up in the running as far as getting their license. And I got to see a Edson 2. It's a electric car. It gets 245 miles per charge. It's 1,100 pounds. It's a 4-door, and they're hoping to do a mass production here in Colorado. And they're asking, reason why Commerce City was invited, because they're looking for different companies who might provide the supplies in some of the 9 cities that are in Adams County. So that was pretty exciting.
Okay. Anything further? If there be nothing further to come before the City Council this evening, we are adjourned. Now I will open the meeting for the GID General Improvement District, Infrastructure Improvement District. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ford?
Here.
Moreno?
Here.
Teeter?
Here.
Carson?
Present.
Benson?
Here.
Bullock?
Here.
McEldowney?
Here.
Elliott? Present. Douglas?
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Let the record show that everybody's in attendance this evening. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes. Mr. Moreno.
Move to approve the meeting minutes of September 17, 2012.
Mr. Bullock.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of September 17th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is Resolution GID 2012-01, which is also a public hearing on the budget for the GID. Mr. McEldowney? Okay. I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the council regarding the proposed budget for the GID? Seeing none? You want to give an update like you did on the last one?
I will do so.
Thank you.
For 2013, we have estimated revenues slightly over $5 million. Our expenditures for that, we have the 2002 debt of service payment of $565,900. The 06 debt service payment of a little over $2.3 million. The 2008 debt service payment around $1.9. We have administrative expenses around $87,000, and we expect to transfer to fund balance slightly over $53,000 to match our revenues of $5,050,363. Currently, we have a mill levy of 27 mills. That is necessary at this point to cover the interest rate risk, and necessary if we decide to take the debt service to a fixed rate. Again, what we are asking tonight is to open and continue the public hearing on tonight, and then November 5th, close the public hearing and act on the budget and certify the mill levy at that time.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Leslie, a quick question on the revenue for, the projected revenue, rather, for 2013. That's the first year that we'll see the impact of the revised valuations of properties, is that right? Is it 2013 or was it 2012 that we see that?
They evaluate in 13, but that won't be until we get 14's taxes.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember.
There's a delay with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other, Mr. Moreno? I'm ready.
Move to continue the public hearing on the 2013 GID budget to November 5th, 2012.
Thank you. Mr. McEldowney? Second. A motion and a second to continue the public hearing. Mr. Douglas, did you have something to add? Okay, no problem. I have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing to the November 5th meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion is carried. And if there be no further business to come before the GID, we are adjourned. I have no idea. Did they? Nice.
What was the score?
It was real close there for a second.
35 to 24?
Yeah, we were behind 24-6.
Wow.
You know this.
Yeah, I don't know this.
Yeah, I'm in a meeting. Where are you guys at?
10-minute break.
I saw you sitting in the audience.
Nice. I had no idea.
I'm thinking to myself.
Shut off.
I'm going to pull the card. This may be one of my last meetings.
He hopes. He hopes.